Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 11th, 2023 New Bern Board of Aldermen meeting. Tonight, the prayer will be coordinated by Alderman Prill.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sure that everybody in this room, if not everybody, most of us occasionally watch the news. And what we typically are bombarded with is news stories such as, so far in 2023, there have been 146 mass shootings in the United States, resulting in 209 deaths and 563 injuries. A little over 2 months ago, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake occurred in southern Turkey, resulting in over 57,000 deaths in Turkey and another 7,200 deaths in Syria. And just in the last week to 10 days, parts of the Midwest and southern U.S. have been hit by a rash of tornadoes, with lives lost and portions of communities totally destroyed. The point being that there's a lot happening all around us. I would ask that everyone take a few moments to reflect on these bigger picture issues, and at the same time, think about the items that are before us this evening and acknowledge that we can work through these items in a calm, deliberative, non-confrontational way and be the better for it. So if you would, just take a few moments and join me in just quiet deliberation. Thank you. And Mayor, if I could just take another couple of minutes, if everybody would indulge me. I'd like to introduce you to Flat Stanley. Flat Stanley is a school project for one of my 6-year-old grandsons who resides in New Jersey. Flat Stanley, the purpose of this school project is for Flat Stanley to visit friends and neighbors around the country or around the world and to have his adventures documented. So this evening, Flat Stanley is joining me on the dais. He's on TV from New Bern, North Carolina. So hopefully my grandson will appreciate the effort that is being made on his behalf. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir, thank you. If you would, please stand with me as we pledge allegiance to the flag of our country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Alderman Prill.
Here.
Alderman Royal. Here. Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Odham.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best. Present. Alderman Brinson.
Here. Okay, everyone's present. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? If so, I'd take a motion to approve that.
Mayor,
Yes,
before
ma'am.
we do that, can I ask the board if we will please move item number 11 and 12 up on the agenda, because it's a recognition and sometimes don't take as much time as presentations do. So we have 2 presentations before this, and there may be citizens that have something else that they need to do if the board so choose to.
So is that a motion to move 11 and 12 after item number 8?
That is correct.
Mayor, I'm sorry. If I could, I'd like to request that item 6 be removed from the consent agenda and acted on separately.
Okay.
First motion first.
Alderman Best, let's take your motion first. That was to move items number 11 and 12 after item number 8. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Alderman Prill, I'm going to take your motion to pull item number 6 from the consent agenda and consider that after item number 8. Is that good?
That's fine. Yeah.
That's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, let's have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes noted, please.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That was a lot of work for approving the agenda. Let's hope the rest of the night doesn't go like that. Item number 4, request and petition of citizens. Madam Clerk. Thank you. And it may just go that far. Okay, first petition is from Bill Stafford of 2001 Clubhouse Drive.
Good evening, Mayor Odham and members of the New Bern Town Council. My name is Bill Stafford, and I am a resident of New Bern. Having served as an elected official before, I clearly understand when new issues such as social districts enter the public forum. My hope tonight is to leave you with encouragement for consideration of forming a planning committee to bring this issue back for consideration. I also want to share 3 personal facts of clarity. 1, I was very involved in Mayor Odham's campaign, but he knows nothing about my comments tonight and is hearing them for the first time, just like you are. 2, I own no real estate in downtown New Bern. I have no real estate listed, nor leased, nor am I interested or have any lease offers out. I do own an entertainment company called Stafford Entertainment and Talent, and up through 2022, no more than 3% of my profits, of my gross income came from any activities in downtown New Bern. What I clearly want to set the picture is, yes, I'm on a couple of boards in the area, but I'm here not representing any board, anybody but Bill Stafford. When my wife Suzanne and I looked where we thought we might like to spend the last years of our life, the positive downtown development of New Bern was very impressive. In fact, we planned a destination wedding here for our last daughter before we moved here. The lifestyle we saw then is one that has been developed by strong community leaders who knew the value of taking calculated risk for the betterment of the whole. Your being willing to openly study this issue to the fullest and openly learn the positives, if they outweigh the concerned negatives, would be a course of action I hope you will consider. While reading about many of the 30 social districts currently operating in North Carolina, I chose to contact a few of those with similar socioeconomic makeup like New Bern. For instance, Hickory, Asheboro, and Washington. Hickory Police Captain Philip Demas, who is in charge of the force that covers that area, said to me, quote, "This district has been in place for over a year and it's going great," close quote. Hickory is a town much like New Bern, living on the edge of the mountains, while New Bern is living on the edge of the coast. Facts around Asheboro, which houses our state zoo, indicates that they have already added to their original district because of the positive effect of the initial existence. I'm sure you know that Washington, North Carolina Town Council has approved, and Police Chief Stacy Drakeford has had his input, and I spoke with him, and he's ready to move forward. One of the biggest concerns for New Bern is that most downtown businesses rely heavily on town traffic, such as conventions and business meetings. My company is a member of AENC, which stands for Executives of North Carolina, which drives corporate business conventions and meetings all over North Carolina. They have noticed an increase in the questions regarding whether community has a social district. In closing, New Bern will soon have to answer the question with a no, or hopefully at least be able to say it's being studied. Thanks for all of your love of New Bern and your consideration of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Christopher and Carolyn Adams of 2904 Betty Gresham Lane.
Good evening, everyone. We would like to take this opportunity to personally thank the mayor, Mr. Astor, Mr. Childs, and those of you who came out to our community to observe what we have been going through with NCCI homes regarding the flooding of our backyards. I would like to bring you up to date to let you know that since you came out and visited our subdivision along with the media, Nolan did send someone out to dig up a swell deep enough so that the stormwater could properly run off. And at this point, we have had no serious concerns about additional flooding of our backyards. However, I will point out that not everyone is happy, but for the majority of us, we are happy. I also would like to mention that during the walkthrough of our subdivision, it was brought to our attention that there are several issues that need to be addressed by Nolan before the city will take over its responsibilities as it pertains to our subdivision. There is a scheduled meeting of our HOA at the end of April. At that time, we were told that the last home has been sold in our subdivision, and so Nolan would like for us to take over the HOA. However, until such time as we are aware of what those issues are that the city has with NCCI, we do not want to assume the responsibility of assuming the responsibilities for the HOA. So in closing, if we could have a copy of what it is that you are requesting from NCCI to have repaired prior to you assuming responsibility of anything with regard to our subdivision, such as street lights, I believe you said, and the streets itself. We don't want to assume responsibility for anything that this builder should be doing. So we would like to know what it is that you're requesting of them prior to our taking responsibility of the HOA. In closing, I want to thank you very much for coming out again. And for those of you on the board who expressed interest and concern, I thank you. My husband and I would thank you also, and so do the neighbors within our community. We were so happy when you all came out and expressed to us just how much you are concerned about what we're interested in and how we want to be happy within the New Bern area. We have only been here for 8 months, and this is where we have retired. So, once again, I thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Alderman Astor.
Scott, since the HOA is the contractor, can he turn that over to the residents and let them be worried about fixing all the stuff that needs to be fixed?
No, sir, he would just be turning over the amenities for that phase of the subdivision and the stormwater system. But the infrastructure, the other infrastructure, would come to the city directly. Sidewalks,
Okay, but
curbs,
somebody's
gutters.
got to do 52 pages worth of work over there before the city will accept it.
That's right.
Can he turn it over to the residents
No, sir.
without those repairs and then asking the city?
He can turn over common areas, that parks, lakes, those kinds of things, but he can't convey, those are already dedicated on a plat, so they're already offered to the city, so only the city can accept it, but once the repairs are made.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Jerry Avery of 475 Loop Road in Cove City.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Board of Aldermen. My name is Jerry Avery, and I live in the Wintergreen community of near Cove City. Today, I have the honor of representing Bradham's Legacy and Pepsi-Cola collectors all over the United States and advocating for the creation of a Pepsi-Cola museum. Having lived in Craven County my entire life, my family ties to New Bern date back to before de Graff and Reed even arrived in 1710. Which instills in me a profound sense of attachment to the region's past. My love for New Bern has grown stronger over time as I continue to research its people, culture, and stories of the city's rich history. One fun fact that I tell people when I travel outside of North Carolina is that North Carolina hosts Pepsi-Cola, formed right here in a small town in North Carolina. Caleb Bradham's pharmacy made an indelible mark in history as the birthplace of a revolutionary digestive aid in 1898, which became one of the world's most iconic cola brands, Pepsi Cola. Considering this remarkable achievement, it's only fitting to establish a museum that commemorates this legacy. After extensive research on Caleb, his family, and the history of Pepsi Cola, it's clear that building a museum is necessary, not only to honor the brand's founder, but also to pay tribute to the many families who have worked tirelessly as employees in Eastern North Carolina, contributing to the brand's success. The museum is not just the story of Caleb. It's about the community, past and present, who have played a vital role in Pepsi Cola's success. It provides an opportunity of highlights the stories of those who have defied societal norms and prejudices against other people of color and women, showcasing their achievements and inspiring future generations. The museum is a powerful way to recognize and celebrate the efforts of these individuals and to ensure that the contributions are remembered for years to come. Let me tell you of a few remarkable women entwined in the story. I graduated from West Craven High School in 1989. As a student, I had the pleasure of getting to know Miss Livonia Pat Frazier. Many of you may know her. She was the very first African-American model for Pepsi Cola back in the 1940s. Her work in Pepsi Cola advertising, and as the first black model to appear in national advertising campaigns, Miss Pat played a significant role in breaking down racial barriers in the modeling industry. Miss Pat's work for Pepsi Cola helped to challenge the industry's prevailing notions of beauty and racial representation, and she paved the way for future generations of black models to enter the industry. Her contributions to the broader struggle for racial equality have been recognized as significant and groundbreaking. Ms. Pat's fearlessness to break barriers are encouraged by a national corporate brand willing to step out of the status quo during a time when it was sociably not acceptable to do so. Pepsi Cola embraced the fact that there was diversity among its consumer base and made strides never before seen to recognize that it needed representation for everyone. Pepsi Cola hired employees from ethnic and racial minorities to serve in all aspects of the company, from the ground floor all the way up to its very own vice president, in an effort to bring forth change in how it did business. It was led by example, not just words. Pepsi Cola received opponents, though. They were not looked at kindly. Nevertheless, Pepsi Cola pushed forward and is today still focusing on diversity within its ranks. I had the chance to witness this firsthand when I was invited to visit PepsiCo's headquarters in Purchase, New York in 2019. Caleb was a man who was influenced by strong women from the very beginning. Our research into his life and the history of Pepsi Cola highlights this belief time and time again. One notable example is that before.
Go ahead and finish your statement.
Our research into his high history, Miss Charity Criddle Bradham, his wife, ran for mayor of New Bern in 1924. Caleb actively supported Charity's election campaign and used his business and political influence with area businessmen to promote her candidacy.
Mr. Avery,
despite...
If you will, we've got a lot of people that's going to speak tonight, so if you want to share those written notes with the clerk or either the assistant manager, they'll get copies and share that with all the board.
Thank you.
Thank you,
y'all
sir.
very much. And I've also got a petition I'm going to hand off to you.
Very good. Thank you. Next up is James Kinsey from 12,005 Harrogate Road, all the way from Chester, Virginia.
Yep. Good evening. My name's Scott Kinsey. I'm from near Richmond. I'm the president of the Pepsi Cola Collectors Club, an organization that was formed in 1983, dedicated to the documentation and preservation of memorabilia and history of the Pepsi Cola Company. My wife and I started collecting Pepsi Cola memorabilia in 1988, and up until that time, we had no idea of New Bern's early history with the Pepsi Cola brand. We made our first trip to New Bern in June of 1990 to see where it all started, which most Pepsi collectors think this is the Mecca for them. So it's like a pilgrimage when they come. So the only thing then was we were somewhat disappointed with the lack of Pepsi history that existed at that time. The only display of Pepsi memorabilia was in an antique mall across from where the Pepsi store is today, and that belonged to a private collector named Ted Haynes. We did love the city, and we continued to visit for short getaways. Over the years, the Pepsi Club has had several functions in New Bern, including the large celebration in 1998 for Pepsi's 100th anniversary. The club will be here again in New Bern in May. Towards the end of May, we'll be having our East Coast convention here. If you travel 7 hours southwest to Atlanta, Atlanta has a Coca-Cola museum. That's where Coca-Cola was invented. State-of-the-art museum. If you go to Waco, Texas, there's the Dr. Pepper Museum, state-of-the-art museum. So it would be only right that Pepsi-Cola has a museum here in New Bern. From what I understand, 2 collections have been donated to the cause, and these are $1 million collections. And the museum, funding for the museum is really actually the easy part, because you would never be able to assemble a collection like these 2 collections in a lifetime. It wouldn't matter how much money you threw at it, this stuff is just not there. Because the early history, because of bankruptcies, early history's been lost to time. And there's always new discoveries coming up. But anyhow, it's been the dream of most people in the club that there be a museum, and that rightful place would be New Bern. So I ask that you support funding for this project. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Kevin Roberts, 1008 Colleton Way. Hand them to the clerk. She'll share them with us. Thank you.
So good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here. As was said, I'm Kevin Roberts. My address is a Trentwood's address. I'm the director of your Chamber of Commerce, so I spend most of my waking hours at 316 South Front Street. I am here tonight mostly going to read a statement from one of your retailers downtown that could not be here. Lindsay Sims and Winnie Smith, owners of Mitchell Hardware, asked that I read this to you tonight. New Bern Board of Aldermen, as downtown business owners and longtime residents of New Bern, we believe the North Carolina Rural Transformation Grant would be an amazing opportunity for the creation of Bradham's legacy. We support the development of the Pepsi Museum because of the economic impact across all businesses, retail, restaurant, hospitality, airport, etc. This would provide employment opportunities during the construction phase and beyond for years to come. Most importantly, the museum will provide a safe, enjoyable experience for local families and attract visitors from afar. As retailers, we hear feedback from customers regarding a need for fun, educational experiences, and this meets that need. While living in Atlanta, we frequently visited the Coca-Cola Museum, which has a very interactive space with history that speaks to children and adults. Although any Pepsi museum here would surely be a smaller scale, it would be a memorable attraction that is unique to New Bern alone. Although people have voiced concerns regarding parking and funding, we strongly believe these concerns should not prevent the project from happening. There are always opportunities to create solutions that may coincide with the growth we are seeing in our community. We are proud to live in the birthplace of Pepsi, and we believe this grant would lead to a valuable addition to our community. Thank you for your time and consideration. And for my part, I would say this. I think it's important to point out, and for all of us to remember, that tonight you're not being asked to decide which piece of property this thing gets put on. You're not being asked to approve a floor plan or a number of square feet. Those things will come. You'll get those opportunities. Tonight's just about the opportunity to keep exploring this beautiful thing. This thing that is would probably have a very important impact on this market for many, many years to come. As a father in this market, now a grandfather in this market, that's exciting to me, and I hope it will be exciting to you, and I urge you to endorse this project by allowing that application to go in so that we can see if these grant monies are available to us to help this project happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Lynn Herrickle of 602 Middle Street.
name's Lynn Harrikel. Thank you for having me here this evening. I am the Executive Director of Swiss Fair. I think probably most of you realize that I am in that role and as also a citizen in favor of this grant for the Pepsi Museum project. Today I've had a number of letters of support sent to me. There are 14 there. And there unfortunately are 2 that came in late, one also from the New Bern Historical Society and one from Carolyn Buzzy Stubbs. The other letters, really quickly, I'll go through who they're from. Von Lewis, who owns Baxter's, Johnny Robinson, of Robinson and Stith, he's the owner of 206 Craven as well. Chris Ritchie, owner of Not of the Swell, his wife is the owner of Carolina Creations, also a downtown resident. Adam and Candace Simmons, downtown restaurant owner, Morgan's. Ken McCotter, Emeritus Swiss Fair. John Robert Maddox, he owns multiple properties in downtown New Bern. Chris McCutcheon, former chair of both Swiss Fair and the Chamber. Rick Davis, a downtown resident. Mike Johnson, who is a Pepsi bottler with Memphis Bottling Company. Bill Russ, a small business owner at the Farmers Market and Emeritus Swiss Fair. Joe Hunt, the Farmers Market president. Denny and Diane Booger, downtown residents, and Denny is also the Commissioner, District 7, and Vice Chair. Ross Beebe, he is a commercial realtor located in downtown New Bern. Jim and Gail Bisbee, they are downtown property owners, and they own the last detail. I would like to, if you would allow me, to read at least one letter from that was submitted tonight. This one is from Johnny Robinson. Dear Alderman, I am strongly in favor of the city submitting an application for a rural transformation grant on behalf of Bradham's Legacy. I had planned to come in person tonight to voice my opinion, but I have come down with a stomach bug, so this letter will have to suffice in my absence. From my understanding, the Rural Transformation Grant, provided by the North Carolina Department of Commerce, can supply a maximum award of $950,000. The City of New Bern must be the applicant and must administer the funds. It is my understanding the funds will be used in conjunction with leadership by Bradham's Legacy to initiate a Pepsi Museum in the greater downtown area. It is also my understanding that Triumph Palace will help to curate the exhibits. I am a rare animal, this is Johnny talking, a unicorn if you will. I am a proud native New Bernian, born in Craven Regional Medical Center and raised here. I have lived in New Bern for 39 of my 45 years on this world. 6 at school and working in Raleigh made up the difference. I have seen the downside and the upside of downtown New Bern. I also grew up with grandparents that lived in Dover. Often over summers as a kid, my grandparents would keep my sister and I, and we would always go downtown to travel to Kinston with my grandmother for shopping and to eat at Pizza Villa. Back then, New Bern's downtown was dilapidated, and Kinston was the focal point of eastern North Carolina. In my lifetime, I have seen the scales go in the opposite direction, and we've done such a great thing in downtown New Bern. Meanwhile, Kinston went in the other direction. I moved back to New Bern in September 2002, and I have not regretted it for a minute. My 2 children were both born in the same hospital in which I was born. I want to see us continue to climb that ladder and create more industry in this town to further solidify the town's future and the future of my children. A Pepsi Museum would create one more level of revenue diversification for visitors to our fair city. I don't want to see New Bern move in the opposite direction like Kinston once did. PepsiCo is number 45 in the Fortune 500 list for 2022, and this entity was founded 2 blocks from my office. Their annual revenue is over $86 billion. The fact that we don't have a museum already honoring that accomplishment is pretty wild. And I'll allow you to read the rest of that on your own.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Dan Roberts of 2220 Foxhorn Road. Not kin to the previous Roberts that spoke, correct?
Alderman, Mr. Mayor, thank you for this time. A lot of people have said a lot of really good things in favor of this. I'm certainly in favor of you applying for the grant. I think it would be a wonderful thing, and a shame if the birthplace of Pepsi did not have the Pepsi Museum. They're going to have it somewhere. Why not New Bern? In the business I'm in, I meet new people all the time that have moved to New Bern. There was something that brought them here. Can you imagine the people that would come here just for seeing that? They may not come to New Bern originally, but they might be at the beach and looking for something else to do, other than maybe the Triton Palace on a rainy day. Coming to see the Pepsi Museum when you come to New Bern for the first time gives you a good reason to move here. From the TDA hat, I'm the chair of the TDA, having something else in our inventory for people to come here and spend more time here, spend their dollars, leave tax dollars here, stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants, and go to our retail establishments. I think it's a no-brainer and a win-win. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Mallory Lloyd, 606 Victoria Drive in Hillsborough.
Hi, my name is Mallory Lloyd, and I'm here in support of the Pepsi Museum. My family has been selling and collecting Pepsi for over 50 years. My grandfather started in 1972, and I'm a third-generation collector. We're not from New Bern, but we spend a lot of time coming here. We love the city. We love coming to the celebrations you have, coming with our Pepsi-Cola Collectors Club. We just love it. Even though we're out-of-towners, Pepsi is close to our hearts, and think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that no one else in the world has and would add to your rich history. We think not only is it going to add to New Bern's history, but also North Carolina history. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next is Billy Falconberry, 103 Matthews Lane.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. I live in Trent Woods. I was a resident of New Bern for over 50 years. I have a business here for over 30 years, right across the street. I have been active in many civic organizations, including Swiss Bear, for over 30 years. And many of the points have been made about the Pepsi Museum. And again, this is about a grant application. This is not about a museum tonight. This is just getting started. So we're asking you to request, to allow this request to go in so that we can request funds in this grant. I'd like to just, in a few points, remind you of a few things about how far New Bern has come. When I first got back out of college and was hoping New Bern would redevelop, maybe some of you will remember this, some of you I know aren't aware of it, but there was a proposal to put an adult bookstore where Marx is now. There was a proposal to relocate the jail to where the Doubletree is now. So we've made some good moves. Those would not have been. We've come a long way in redeveloping and getting an economy going here. That economy has been rebuilt largely based around tourism. That's a key component of it, and I think that a Pepsi Museum here would obviously be a huge boost to tourism. Third, I think we have a unique opportunity. Nowhere else can claim to be the birthplace of Pepsi. We're it. I had hopes years ago. There were rumblings of a museum. It's never happened. We got the opportunity now. We have support both within Pepsi and I think in the community to make this happen. Again, this is just a simple request that the funding through this grant would be here to help initiate the project. And as Kevin said earlier, there are many hurdles to go through to get a project like this in place that would offer plenty of time for public comment and input. Lastly, I'm asking you to do what's right for your community and support this grant request.
Thank you. Next is Kelly Billingsley, 308 Camellia Road.
Good evening. Most of my comments, I had them prepared, have already been spoken. I am completely for the Pepsi Museum, for applying for the grant for the Pepsi Museum. I'm a native New Bernian, and I've always been proud to tell everyone that the place I'm from is also the place the Pepsi's from. And like it was just said, it would really be a shame for New Bern to not have the Pepsi Museum when it's really kind of the center of the Pepsi universe as far as I'm concerned. So I do hope you will consider and approve the request for the grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Melissa Riggle, 500 Rogers Court.
Alderman Platt Stanley. I have actually two letters as well to present, if you don't mind. As the mayor said, I'm Melissa Riggle. I am the director of the Craven County Tourism Development Authority. I've heard tremendous comments from everybody that I definitely would echo all of. I have two letters that I wanted to share that are very different perspectives, but I think provide a equal significance and importance that support the item number 13, the agenda item for the Bradham's Legacy Grant. This is from, Tammy Rodriguez of 108 Relini Drive in Havelock. A Havelock resident, but some of you may recognize the name. Tammy Rodriguez is our visitor center manager at the visitor center, and probably one of our most critical tools in the tourism toolbox that we have. Dear Alderman, my name is Tammy Rodriguez. I am not originally from New Bern or even North Carolina. I grew up in Wisconsin, living near my dad's side of the family. My family has been dedicated Pepsi drinkers and fans for multiple generations. Growing up, my dad would only drink Pepsi and my mom would only drink Diet Pepsi. When we went to my grandparents' house, they too only drank Pepsi. My dad, Jeff Treat, who passed away in 2022, was such an avid Pepsi drinker that even while serving in the Army, he made sure he never was without a Pepsi. The picture below shows him in a tenement hole in Engerland, Germany, when he was in the 1st Battalion, 37th Armored Headquarters Company in Battalion Maintenance in 1979. One of his Army buddies told me that any time they went on a maneuver, they took at least 4 cases of Pepsi with them. There was always a case in their room as well. In 2019, my dad made a trip out to visit us, and of course, one of the first places we stopped at was the birthplace of Pepsi. He loved walking around and seeing all of the Pepsi memorabilia and the collection of different cans from around the world. He even talked to one of the ladies there about sending a can to them that he had from the Germany collection to add. I think a Pepsi museum would be a great asset to New Bern and a great way to honor the history of both Pepsi and New Bern. Sincerely, Tammy Rodriguez. I think this again just speaks to the emotional toll. I think we lose sometimes as residents the true impact that this international iconic brand truly holds. So this kind of helps to pull on those heartstrings. My second letter is from the VP of Tourism with the Economic Development Partnership for North Carolina, or Visit North Carolina. To whom it may concern, Visit North Carolina is a unit of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina. Our mission to lead and unify the state in positioning North Carolina as a preferred destination for travelers and film production in maximizing economic vitality statewide. As North Carolina's lead marketing engine, Visit North Carolina supports the efforts to create a Pepsi Museum in New Bern. A Pepsi Museum would be an outstanding asset to add to the attractions in the region. It would give people another reason to visit North Carolina. It would most definitely have a positive economic impact on the local community, Eastern North Carolina, and even beyond. Our research shows that there is a growing interest in historical interpretations and places that showcase what is unique and authentic about a destination. A Pepsi Museum would provide a framework for heritage-based economic development, including tourism-related increased jobs, business incomes, and tax revenue. It would also make the area more attractive to visitors as well as the local community and would promote community pride. Should you have any questions or require any additional information, please feel free to contact me. He provided his information, but it's Whit Tuttle, VP of Tourism for the state of North Carolina. So as you can see, very significantly different letters, but just as equally as impactful. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Next up is Bryn Harms of 2800 Currituck Court.
Thank you, Mayor, Alderman, City Council, everybody that's here. I live in New Bern. I live in Ward 2. Thank you, Alderman Royal, for your hard work. I work for First Carolina Management. We manage properties here in New Bern, the Doubletree Hotel, Persimmons Restaurant downtown, and then we have the Spring Hill Suites and Hampton Inn on Hotel Drive. I'm very much in favor of seeking to move forward on this grant for the Pepsi. I come from Minnesota, moved here because of the weather. There's a town, a city in Minnesota that's very similar in size to New Bern, Austin, Minnesota. We were there when they opened the Spam Museum. I know there are a lot of Pepsi collectors. I had no idea how many people would come to town to see Spam. But they come from all over and they spend money. And so as a hospitality person, I know the impact of having tourism dollars come in. I can give you the facts, you know, just on a local level. For every single night, room night that we get, you're looking at between $10 and $13 that goes back into our local and occupancy tax that comes back and stays local. It also provides about an hour of employment for every guest that spends a night with us. So the more nights that they spend in town, the more hours it provides employment. We have 107 employees in our company now that desperately need more hours. And so I'm in favor of having Pepsi here. And I would just encourage you to look at Austin, Minnesota and the Spam Museum and see what is possible in this beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dean Quidar, 1665 NC 55 West.
Thank you. My name is Dean, and I've been a resident of New Bern for 9 years now. I'm also, as a business owner and operator downtown, work alongside Bern, who was just up here at Persimmon's Restaurant. I wanted to speak in favor of to proceed with the grant for the Pepsi Museum. Obviously, I'm vested in hospitality and tourism, and I appreciate that this town has cultivated quite a special culture and environment here, and I think that's worth protecting. With that said, in the interest of protecting that, we have to grow, we have to experience positive change, and that's not just economically, but that's also culturally. And this project seems objectively like a no-brainer to not just enhance the New Bern experience for locals and tourism alike, but it's also a big part of New Bern history. It's part of our draw, it's part of our culture, and I really very much support proceeding with the project, and I do feel it would be a shame if they did this museum somewhere else. It really belongs nowhere else but New Bern. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mike Duffy of 121 Morning Drive.
Good evening. The best way to get people interested in investing in New Bern is to show them something interesting. So my advice is to continue to offer the smart leadership that you have been doing and take the money.
Thank you. Next up is Catherine Harrelson. Ms. Harrelson, you've got your P.O. box. If you could just state your street address for the record, please.
My name is Catherine Harrelson. I live at 5329 Trentwoods Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am the chairman of the Tryon Palace Commission. I am a born and raised New Bernian. I've been involved with Tryon Palace for over 30 years. As you well know, tourism is one of the major drivers in this community. Tryon Palace is one of the major drivers of the economy in this community. Tryon Palace Commission is the owner of the Slotnick Knut collection. We are now displaying a very small portion of that collection, and we have people come in every day who would like to see more of the collection. I would like to respectfully request that you all approve the Bradham Legacy's request to sponsor their grant request. I think it will be transformational for New Bern. I think it will be transformational for Tryon Palace, and I hope that you will look upon it favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kyle Dickerson of 416 Pollock Street.
Good evening, Mayor, Alderman. Point of clarification, the address I provided is my office address. I actually live in Trentwoods, 3309 Virginia Avenue, Trentwoods.
Thank you.
I'm an attorney. I work for the law firm Summerall Sugg. It's a law firm here in downtown New Bern. It's been in business, having offices here for over 70 years. As a downtown business owner, I am in support of pursuing the grant to look into opening the Pepsi Museum here in downtown. I'm also the chair of the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm pro-business and pro-economic development and tourism here, and I wanted to let you know that I support that, and many of the folks and the business owners I've talked to are also in support of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michelle Stout, 1622 Rim Avenue.
Hello. I have no prepared speaking points, and honestly, I'm speaking more to the people who are listening more than you. No disrespect. I was blown away during the last Board of Aldermen meeting when the agenda was changed before it was even approved, so that we couldn't hear the presentation, so that all of these people that have something to say about Pepsi could have the information already. We could be having a completely different conversation right now. And so what I'm asking is for you guys to start listening and not just shutting stuff down, because communication is what's going to take us forward and make our city continue to grow and be the best city around. And that's all I have to say. I do think you should pursue the grant, though.
Thank you. Next is Danny Batten, 608 New Street.
Good evening, Mayor Odham, Alderman. My name is Danny Batten. I own a retail store for the past 17 years in downtown New Bern and another retail store in the Five Points area. And I just wanted to briefly speak about the transformation grant to see the Pepsi Museum come into fruition. Normally, I would support incremental changes, small incremental changes to the town. But this is a big project, and this is an exception. Obviously, the merits of this project are undeniable. The one bad thing about going after everybody else is I was going to actually reference the Spam Museum, but that was already done. So it's okay. I got to back up. The Dr. Pepper Museum in Waco, Texas, sees about 170,000 visitors annually. It's not very difficult to extrapolate the economic benefit of that number of visitors to our restaurants and our retail stores. We already have some great museums in town. You know, we have the Fireman's Museum, the North Carolina History Museum. A museum like the Pepsi Museum would create density, and density always creates economic benefit. That's why you see, you know, a McDonald's and a Burger King built beside each other, a Home Depot and a Lowe's. The marketing of a Pepsi Museum would have tremendous benefits to our town. You know, marketing 101 is distinguish yourself. Find that one thing that distinguishes yourself from the competition. So how do we distinguish New Bern from all the other historic towns up and down Highway 17? When I meet strangers and I tell them I'm from New Bern, some have heard of New Bern, most have not. One of my first descriptions is the birthplace of Pepsi Cola, and you see the light bulb. You see the immediate connection. It's our one marketing hook, and so we don't want to deny the ability to take advantage of that marketing hook. So I'm here to tell you, please support the Transformation Grant. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Lisa Faye Zimmelman of 1603 Washington Court.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Faye Zimmelman. I chose to settle here in New Bern after retiring from the Army because I love this place so much. I lived here before and I needed to come back. I'm currently an agent at Keller Williams New Bern and a Chamber of Commerce ambassador. So I'm dedicated in two ways to this city and helping its people and businesses. I'm here today to speak in favor of the proposed grant for the world's only Pepsi Museum, right here in the place where it all started. This is a fantastic opportunity that will bring more jobs to New Bern, more visitors to New Bern, and will in turn bring more business to all the businesses in New Bern. These guests will stay in our hotels, they'll eat at our restaurants, they'll visit our stores, they'll add another item to their agenda, along with all the previously mentioned museums that I was also going to bring up. And just everything else that we have to offer, extending their stay and contributing to our revenue. And the Pepsi Museum will be a place that caters to families. So when you hear that thousands of people will be coming to visit, that's not every single person in their own car clogging up the streets or taking up all the traffic. That's going to be, families with kids and groups. So, when we're worried about parking and all of that, they're going to be staying at the hotels and parking at the hotels downtown and walking, or taking a shuttle if we set up a shuttle system from the Midtown hotels. There's lots of things that can be done fairly simply with our infrastructure to make all of this work if we really want it. Again, this will be the only Pepsi Museum in the entire world, and as other people have said, someone else will be very willing to snatch that away from us if given the opportunity. It does not benefit us to resist change simply on the principle that it's change. We're an old town. Some people don't like change. But this is what downtown New Bern should be, about teaching people about the history of our city that we love while embracing the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes item number 4, request and petition of citizens. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Just a reminder that item 6 has been pulled and will be discussed separately. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda less item number 6?
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda, that's item number 6.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Prill.
Alderman Prill,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Brinson,
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries. We will now discuss item number 6, consider adopting a resolution to close the 900 and 1,000 blocks of Pollock Street for Tap That Beermuda Block Party. Alderman Prill, you wanted this one pulled separately, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, the main reason that I asked that this be handled separately is last year, I recall walking by this event, and it was late afternoon, around 4:30. 3 blocks away, I could hear the band play. So needless to say, as I got closer to the event, that the noise level from the band just was so loud that it was hard to really think. I couldn't believe that even late afternoon that the decibel level of the band was that high. And I do recall that there were a number of complaints that came in as a result of the level of music being played. My question is, what action is being taken to address that issue before it happens this time around?
Alderman Prill, let me ask Carrie Warren, our Director of Parks and Recreation, to come up and she can address that, and if need be, Chief Gallagher can come up as well.
Good afternoon. We met with the organizers to discuss that specific issue, and PD was present. We talked about, that there would not be any type of warnings given. They had to stay under a certain decibel level. If they did not, of course, PD would be writing tickets for the noise. They have decided to have one band only on the property of the Tap That business. They are also going to have decibel readers on site to keep track of how many decibels, loudness level that's going on. They will be speaking with the people who are performing to let them know that they cannot have music above that decibel level. And they're also gonna be putting in some buffers to kind of help, with breaking up the music. So those are the things we discussed.
And who is going to be responsible for monitoring the decibel meters?
It would be the organizer, which is, Taylor, Shannon, and JD, I'm not sure his last name,
Davis.
Davis, okay, yeah.
So for all intents and purposes, we're kind of back to square one, is that if somebody feels that the decibel level is too high, they're going to need to call the police, make a complaint, and the police will respond. And I don't mean to disparage the organizers and suggest that they are not going to do a good job monitoring the decibel level. I would prefer to see a police officer being sponsored by the organizer to be at the event during the time that the event is going on. And
That
that
was
individual
discussed.
could be monitoring the decibel level in addition to the organizers.
So, yeah, it was discussed, I think we said, 2 officers to be on site is what they're required to have.
Okay.
So to address the proactive approach that the police department took last year, and I'll talk about what we'll do this year, is last year we took multiple readings at that same event. All but one of those readings were below the decimal level. This year we will also have staff in place to monitor the sound based on our decibel readings, and if the sound is over the decimal readings, then we can take an enforcement action.
Okay. Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay, any more questions on item number 6? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve that application.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, let's do all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous, thank you. Okay, item number 11, recognition of the 2023 Citizens Police Academy, Chief Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor. Board of Aldermen, city leadership. It is with great pride that myself and Sergeant Bryce are here to celebrate the accomplishments of the last session of the New Bern Police Department Citizen Police Academy. Since COVID, we've had an opportunity to restart this program. It is very similar to the program that is produced by the city, New Bern 101, although it is a lot more in-depth about police operations. I'm extremely proud of the work that Sergeant Bryce has done in managing this operation and ensuring that our students had an opportunity to see the full breadth of what we do in law enforcement, specifically here in New Bern. And I'll turn it over to Sergeant Kevin Bryce, allow him to provide a few brief comments. And I believe one of the class representatives has a brief comments he'd like to make.
Mayor, Board of Aldermen, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. To my right, you have 15 eager, enthusiastic, and very supportive people, not only law enforcement, but the city of New Bern. Some of the things I heard earlier this evening, I think you can look at this group here and the same would apply to them as far as being natives of Craven County. Only a few of them are natives of Craven County or city of New Bern. A lot of them have moved here because of the beauty of the city of New Bern. I look forward to seeing you on the streets in a good way. But not only do I look forward to serving and to taking, I look forward to calling you friends. And I really appreciate the friendship that I've gained, and I hope you do as well. And I look forward to seeing you out and about the city of New Bern. So I'm going to turn it over to our class president, Ken Lewis. He's been instructed to speak kindly of me.
Good evening, thank you. I've been sitting and listening to everyone talking about Pepsi and all this, but what we're not even looking at is these fine gentlemen right here that any visitors you have come here is going to be safe. And it's something that we learned. And I had a few words, I was trying to keep it nice. But with the conspiracy theories and the false news being so prominent in our everyday lives, most do not have any idea what the police department does on a daily basis. I used to work in the Department of Corrections, so it was real easy for me to be able to look around and tell who the bad guy was. But walking down the streets of New Bern, you have no idea. While I will admit, what started out as a curiosity became a very informative and interesting 10 weeks. I started looking forward to our Wednesdays being with Kevin. It was something that she's always wondering what he was going to have planned for us. And so we really looked forward to it. Classes were very interactive with hands-on details and shared experiences from different officers. We got to see how the CSI and the fingerprint analysis occurred, with a very eye-opening tour of the evidence locker, because I've never been in one, and just seeing what has actually been seized, and a tour of the 911 center. We got to speak with a member of the district attorney's office, the police chief, who's standing right here, and we thank you for that. Various police employees, and even got to participate in the simulator, which is part of their training. Showed some of the ongoing training that the officers perform and have to be proficient at. And you ought to be proud of those guys too. All in all, Sergeant Kevin Bryce has done an outstanding job with everything about the Citizens Police Academy. And with that, the members of the 26th Citizens Police Academy would like to thank him for his excellent presentation over the 10 weeks that we've been here. And we've got a plaque to present to you that says, 26th Citizens Police Academy presented to Sergeant Kevin Bryce in recognition of outstanding dedication, commitment, and ongoing efforts to educate the citizens of New Bern. We want to thank you for that.
We're going to present certificates of completion. Again, it was a 10-week course. The next Citizens Police Academy will begin in September. So we look forward to that. Ms. Shirley Aiken, congratulations. Douglas Cheek. Frank Julian Davis III. Beverly Gaston. David Hoffer. S.E. Knight. Ken Lewis, President. First Lady Tina Lewis. Cindy Madden. Pat Wrigley. Pat also participated in one of our ride-alongs. Michelle Stout. William Wagon. Donna Wilgus. Kenneth Wright. And Natalia Wright. Won't take any more of your time, but again, as you can see, this is an eager bunch. Again, I call them friends. I look forward to seeing them out and about in the community, and thank you for your time. I'm going to get a Pepsi.
Can we get a picture today?
Yes.
So can pass the
Thank you, Sarge and Chief. Okay, item number 12 is another recognition, this time of the New Bern 101 graduates. Mr. Hughes.
Yes, sir. Mayor, this is a program we started a little over 2 years ago. It's an introduction to what the city of New Bern does. The approximately 2-month program takes participants through tours of each department that we have, from finance, which they did tonight, talking with elected officials, to meeting with Parks and Recreation, Public Works, Police, Fire, Rescue, Electric Utilities, Human Resources, and on and on. And it really gives participants an opportunity to learn what it takes to run this city. They learn a lot of facts and interesting information. And they also have an opportunity to ask not only the governing board, but staff any questions they want to. It's really been a very good program over the years. This is the 4th session that we've done. So far, we've had a total of 64 participants to come through this. Our PIO, Colleen Roberts, coordinates this event with all of the departments, and she does a great job of that. And I want to give all of our departments and Colleen a round of applause for all the work they've done. And now it's graduation time. So at this time, I'd like to ask the governing board to come on the other side of the gate area, and we're going to recognize those individuals.
We'll take another group photo at the end.
Go ahead.
Some on this side and some on this side, so they can come up and shake your hand. All right, congratulations to Paula Allen. Antonio Bryant. Amy Burke. David and Donna Denda. Rhoda Fort. Millicent Gallagher. Karen Genoa. Pam Gorman. Matthew Halton.
Joanna and Patrick Kloster. Holly Raby. Chris Waters.
Thank you for all your work.
And last but not least, we have some double dippers from the Citizens Police Academy, Ken and Natalia Wright.
We'd like to try and keep the mayor, the board of aldermen, and the managers up here, so if the participants could squeeze in, that would be great.
Okay, thank you to staff once again for both of those programs. Very, very positive for our community. We appreciate your efforts. Okay, moving on, item number 9 is presentation by Craven County Crime Stoppers. I believe we have Jeff Haddock and Corporal Kelly Cox. It's going to be making a presentation. Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Alderman, Mayor, thank you very much for allowing us this evening. My name's Jeffrey Haddock. I'm the president of the newly formed Craven County Crime Stoppers. We are a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization that is entrusted to help support law enforcement for all of Craven County through the Crime Stoppers program. And again, we do not get any direct funding or anything from any government or law enforcement organization. I'm not here to ask for money tonight. However, I will say that donations are gladly appreciated. And how it works with us is we have two coordinators that we work with, Corporal Kelly Cox with the Craven County Sheriff's Office, and also Captain David Daniels with the New Bern Police Department. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Corporal Cox, and he can explain a little more about how the program works. Thank you.
Mayor, Alderman, thank you for having me tonight. I feel like I need to go on the record just saying I love Pepsi. I mean, I guess that seems to be the thing going on tonight. And if I love Coke, y'all wouldn't know about it. So anyways, I'm from Washington, North Carolina. I'm pretty new to the Sheriff's Office here. Sheriff Hughes swore me in back in November of 22. Prior to my employment here, I was with the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office for the last 11 and a half years. So when I decided to make that transition and Sheriff Hughes had reached out to me coming to work for him, I felt like the time was right. And part of the things that he wanted to do was kind of revamp the Craven County Crime Stoppers program. To my knowledge, it had one several years ago before Sheriff Hughes. And I think things like most boards, it kind of ran out of steam. You know, COVID hit, and you saw a lot of 501c3 boards kind of fall to the wayside because people didn't have that one-on-one interaction. Some of my other duties when I was with the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office was that I also was the lead coordinator for Beaufort County Crime Stoppers under Sheriff Jordan. That being said, this program would not be revamped without the support from Sheriff Hughes and Chief Gallagher. For me, kind of being brand new to the area, they have both been nothing but supportive. Chief Gallagher's command staff, if I've had a question for anything, so I really feel like you've knocked it out of the park by having someone like Chief Gallagher running your police department and everything. That being said, being from Washington, kind of getting to know Craven, you know, there's a couple of things that I still hold dear to Craven. When I went to kindergarten, for example, I knew how to spell my name and I knew how to spell Warehouser. You know, so without Craven County supporting Warehouser, I don't know where I'd be, but you know, y'all may not like the smell, but my father always said that's the smell of money, and I believe it. So, anyways, so a little bit about the program. The program started back in 1976. What happened was there was a case that happened out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where a homicide occurred. And the detective that was working on it kind of got fed up because after about 72 hours, nobody still came forth about this homicide, and happened to a male victim that was leaving the gas station when he was leaving to go home to work one night. So he worked with the local news station, and they ran kind of a reenactment series that you'd see like something like on Unsolved Mysteries or something. And then within 2 weeks, they had enough tips and information that came in, and they were able to arrest the subject. And what they ended up doing was giving a $1,000 cash reward, which back in 1976 was a pretty substantial reward. Since then, the program has grown. There's programs in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and Australia. Once again, it's a 501c3 donation. The good thing about it is that Crime Stoppers complements all law enforcement agencies, okay? And so what we want to try to do, and one thing that Sheriff Hughes and Chief Gallagher really wants to try to get the message out, that just because I'm representing the program and Captain Daniels is helping me represent the program, every agency in Craven County, the boundaries of Craven County, is going to get access to the funds. I don't see the money. I don't touch the money. I don't want the money. You know, I don't want to make WITN or WCTI for the wrong reasons, right? So I feel that, with that being said, you know, you have Trentwood, Riverbend, Havelock, Bridgeton, New Bern PD, the Sheriff's Office, and Vanceboro, that's going to get all these equal tip money if somebody comes in commits a crime in Craven County. Because once again, there's no cookie cutter approach in how we solve crime or beat crime in Craven County. You know, you have good programs like the Citizen Police Academy, you have Neighborhood Watch, Business Watch, Citizens on Patrol, and everything like that. So this is just another tool in our tool belt to help keep Craven County a safer place to live, work, and raise a family. You know, it also gives citizens direct power and a voice to report crime and not have fear of having to be subpoenaed to go to court or retaliation. You know, so when we say we only want your information, not your name, we mean it. And with it kind of being a revamped program, it's going to take a little time to earn the public's trust and everything like that to make sure that that's how it works. But once again, you know, when we get the tip, when the tips come in right now, when you dial the telephone number 633-5141, you get somebody, you know, you're going to give them the information, and then you're going to get a code. Well, they say that, you know, Joe Smith has a warrant for their arrest over in Bridgeton. We're not going to just call Bridgeton PD, and Bridgeton's just not going to go take a battering ram and knock the door down. You know, it's going to be up to the office or the surrounding police departments to verify the information. And then that way, once we verify it, we do surveillance, and then we can make our arrest that way. That person will get a code number, and he'll call back within a week, ask for the deposition of the case, and then we can tell him where to go to pick the money up and such. We're having to crawl before we walk, and we're going to have to walk before we run. So long-term goals from the program is that we want to start a program. It's our P3 program. It's something that we used in Beaufort County. And it's a 24/7, 365, 7 days a week program to where it's pretty much a call center where when you call that number, or you can text, you can email, or you can live chat with somebody. You call that person, you give them the information, and then it automatically gets forwarded to me, and I'll forward it to the appropriate departments. Or if you see something happening in live time and you don't want to feel like you need to call 911, you can also live chat with that person, and it'll directly come to me, so I can view the live chat and give it to the appropriate department as well. Because at the end of the day, the citizens, they're the eyes and ears of the county. I'd love to think that, law enforcement, we can be there to stop crime at a moment's notice. But a lot of times we're playing, zone defense. We're more reactionary than we are solving it before it happens and everything. It's just because of the sheer numbers of the events that go warm. And so, once again, it's just another way for us to just give the citizens another way to help with the program and help combat crime. Like I said, I believe in the program. It solves anything from helping missing person to petty larceny. In Beaufort County, we had a homicide in 2010 where we had a homicide in the town of Bath, which virtually never happens. And what you had a quadriplegic man that was beaten to death in his house. Investigators worked hard, but eventually, the breadcrumbs kind of blew away, and they were kind of at a standstill. Well, about 2 weeks after the event that happened, we ended up getting a tip that came in, and it provided us enough leads to go find the two suspects that had done that brutal murder and stuff. And without those tips, I'm not saying that the homicide may have never been solved, but it definitely sped up the process and everything. So what ended up happening was when I ran on WITN, they saw it, and for the crime of the week, and they felt like they couldn't bear with the conscience or their words were they just couldn't sleep at night. It was eating at their soul. So I still don't know who that person was, he or she. But, I felt like I really believed in the program then when I saw how much of an impact that we could give that family at least closure and stuff. So once again, I believe that, moving forward, we're going to have a lot of good things coming. I'm trying to get it out to enough church groups. Mr. Haddock and I, we've gone to all the city council's boards, fire association meetings and everything like that. So we're just going to continue to try to get it out there. We're on social media. We're on Facebook, Craven County Crime Stoppers, and then on Instagram. And then WITN also runs the Crime of the Week every Saturday and Sunday morning, which is free advertisement. They give us 1.5 minutes of airtime, which, if you know anything about the TV business or radio, it's huge and everything like that. So when I left Beaufort County, they came along with me to Craven County as well. Do y'all have any questions? I don't want to take up a lot of people's time tonight.
Board, questions?
Do you know how's the funding?
So it's all through fundraisers. So the biggest thing right now, we have a 21 board, and they're the ones that come up with great ideas, of coming up with ways of making money. Well, just like with anything else, you got to get out and you got to ask for money. You got to try to help raise money. Things that we had done back in Beaufort County, for example, I just talked from experience, was we had, a Crime Stoppers golf tournament that would net between $18,000 and $20,000 profit. And then we also had a gala or a holiday ball towards the end of the year too, which would have like the Band of Oz come in, and it would raise, between $6,000 and $7,000, but it was a lot easier fundraiser to put on as well. We also have it to where people can contact the information on the brochure and or the information I give on social media. They can contact that way, and they can donate as much or as little as they want. We have an event coming up in Trent Woods on Thursday doing a blood drive where the town of Trentwood is hosting a blood drive, and all profits for every person that donates blood, we're going to get $20 from that. So, and again, Crime Stoppers really complements all law enforcement, just not the sheriff's office, because it's a small portion of my salary being directed on focusing on Crime Stoppers. But I feel like, the people in Craven County and New Bern, they want to be safe. They want to feel safe. And I think the overall feeling is that people do feel safe. Once again, my hat's off to New Bern PD. Anything that I've needed or calls that kind of bled into the city, Chief Gallagher and his employees, policemen, have been there to help back us up in a moment's notice and everything. So again, I just think it's just another tool that we have in our tool belt that we can use. But fundraising is going to be, I'd love to think it would run off hopes and dreams, but it just does not, So I feel that ultimately, it's going to be up to the people to help support the program, and we have all the support, from the sheriff and all the police chiefs to make it just as much a success. Because if anything, I don't want there to be any hurt feelings between the agencies as too. So it's just being just as transparent as we can. We have 16 members of a 21-member board, so if you have any friends or family that you think that might be interested in joining the Crime Stoppers board, we meet the first Thursday of the month at the police substation by the mall at 12 o'clock. And my contact information is on the brochures, so have them reach out to me or Mr. Haddock, and we'd love to continue to grow the board and kind of go from there.
Any more questions?
Thank you for your service, sir, and adding another layer of safety to our city.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corporal.
All right. Thank y'all.
Ma'am, please don't like to say something. I just want to recognize one of our very own she's with us tonight, former Alderman Jamisha Harris is with us tonight. Thank you for.
Mr. Attorney, I made a little bit of a boo-boo. Item number 6, when we pulled that street closure, that is a resolution, and we need to do a roll call vote on that.
Yes, sir.
And I think I did a voice vote, is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
So if we could, do you need them to restate the motion?
It'd be helpful, yes, sir.
Okay, Alderman Prill, you made the motion, and Alderman Brinson, you seconded it. So if you could just restate the motion, and then we'll do a roll call vote to clean that up, please.
Sure. Make a motion to adopt a resolution to close the 900 and 1,000 blocks of Pollock Street for Tap That Beermuda block party.
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Any more discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Royal.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Brinson,
Yes.
Alderman Prill,
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you for that. Now, we will move on to item number 10, presentation on Coastal Carolina Regional Airport. Mr. Andy Shorter is going to do that. Welcome, Andy.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Alderman. Happy to be here tonight talking about the airport. I'll make this quick briefly. Talk about the governance, the economic impact of the airport, some of the air service. And by air service, what I mean is the airline business. That's kind of the industry term. When you're talking airline business, we call it air service. And then we'll go over some of the capital improvements that hopefully you've heard about in the news and things like that we're doing. I put a diagram up there. It's a pretty busy diagram, but it's a diagram of the airport. And if you see the lightly shaded area, that's about 780 acres is what the airport encompasses. That's county-owned property. It's leased to the airport authority, and that's the governance of the airport. The airport authority was established in 1989. It has 12 members, 8 voting members that are appointed by the Craven County Board of Commissioners, and then 4 non-voting members, 3 from our surrounding counties, Jones, Pamlico, Carteret, and then the other one from the commanding officer, Marine Corps Base Cherry Point. So that 780 acres is leased to the airport authority for the term of 100 years. And about 30% of the airports in the country are governed by that, by an authority. About half of them are governed by a municipality, and then the other remaining 15 to 20% actually have private management through a municipality. Economic impact. Hopefully, I turned over a state pamphlet about the economic impact of the airport. That's done every other year by the state DOT. It's very informative. If you go to the very back page, you'll see the 72 airports listed. And there are 72 public airports in North Carolina. What's significant about that is, of course, there's 100 counties. Not every county gets one. And out of those 72 airports, 10 of those are commercial service airports. That means they have airline service in those airports. That's pretty good. Our neighboring states to the north and to the south have 6 or 7 respectively. So North Carolina does very well. The thing to note about that 10, 9 of the other ones are in the 15 most populated cities in the state. Guess which one is not the most, in the 15th most populated city of the state? New Bern. New Bern, by the last economic development publication I've seen, is the 34th most populated city in the state. So I would like to say that, you know, we punch above our weight class. And one reason for that is it being a destination and having attractions that people are here for, whether it be the beach, Tryon Palace, things in New Bern. So what's important about that is when people come in, that also provides service going outbound. And quite frankly, that's how we got the DC flight 1 day a week in the summer, last summer, and we're getting it again this year, this summer. So those things all tie together, and what that does is provide that economic impact. And if you look at those last 2 pages, you can break out Coastal Carolina in that. Coastal Carolina Regional Airport has an annual economic impact of just over $500 million. $513 million. That's the multiplier effect, direct, indirect, and induced, supporting over 2,400 jobs, again, direct, indirect, and induced, and $27 million in tax revenue. A lot of that whereas a lot of the economic impact overall comes from the air service, the airline service, people coming in here. People that fly in spend more money than drive in. That's a fact in the business. But another place where that tax revenue comes from is the aircraft out there, the property tax on those. And the state's very good about pointing out that one airplane out there, you get a large twin-engine airplane or a small jet, has the same tax revenue as 10 houses. Guess what? They're not going to school, they're not driving on the road, you don't need to pick up their trash. So that's something that the state has understood. We've been doing these reports every 2 years for about the last 6 years, and the state legislature has stepped up to start funding airports more. They thought colleges and universities were at the top of the stack at about 16 to 1. For every $1 they gave colleges and universities, it returned $16 in economic impact. The first study we did like this in 2016, it was 20 to 1. Airports were providing $20 for every one that the state gave. So the 10 commercial service airports actually now have recurring funding in the state budget to do capital improvements, the same as we get money from the FAA to do capital improvements. Things on the airport are very expensive. That mile of runway out there, our main runway, as you see going across the picture here, that's very expensive pavement. That's the most expensive pavement in this county. It's a different mix. Of course, you don't want potholes in the runway. So everything on the airport's very expensive. So we get money from the FAA, and now, like I said, we get some of that state money. But the good thing about the majority of the money we get for capital improvements at the airport, they're user fee based. So if you're not using the airport, you're not paying anything into the airport, but you're getting that $513 million a year economic impact, and that's some pretty incredible numbers. So having an airport in your community is an economic engine in and of itself. Part of that economic engine, I said I was going to talk about the air service, right now is American Airlines. We used to have Delta and American. Delta suspended their service at the beginning of COVID. They've also exited 17 other cities since then. Matter of fact, just 2 of them in the last 2 weeks. People always ask, when is Delta coming back? We'd love Delta to come back, but they are still literally exiting markets. So the state of the industry is not settled yet. Maybe airline industry is going to come out of post-pandemic the most different than any other industry. Right now at the regional level, industry-wide, nationwide, there's still about a 30% deficit in seats and service at the regional level, and that's the jets that we get, that you fly to Charlotte, used to fly to Atlanta, and get on the bigger planes. Why is that? That's because of pilot shortage. Pilot shortage was exacerbated by COVID. We already knew it was coming. There was a big block of like-aged pilots moving through the system that we knew was going to start showing up after 2010. FAA added 2 more years to the mandatory retirement age. That helped a little bit. But COVID, they did early retirements for airline pilots. And Boeing's done a study in the next 20 years. We're going to need another 500,000 pilots throughout the world. The Eastern, the Far East is coming on board. China's building like an airport a day. And here we're going to need probably 50,000 pilots in the next 10 years or so. This is the best time in the history of the world if you ever want to be a professional pilot. Studied it for a long time, and there is no time like the present. Airlines are paying a lot more. That was something, it's certainly at the regional level, that held people back before. They've almost doubled the pay in the last 5 years for regional pilots. So it costs a little money. It's kind of like being a lawyer or a doctor. You rack up some bills to get your flight time, but it's very lucrative and a very interesting career if anyone's interested in that. But that's what's mostly been affecting our air service, is the lack of pilots. I've been at Raleigh in the last few months. You'll see a Delta regional jet just parked on the tarmac because they don't have pilots for it. So we're working. What are we doing? Well, about 3 times a year, we go and talk to airlines. We go to these conferences where you get 20 minutes with each airline that wants to talk to you. The good thing is airlines want to talk to us, so we give them a pitch. Melissa from the TDA has gone with me, Jeff from the EDC has gone with me, and we give them the community pitch, why they want to be here. And back to that, creating a destination is important for the people that live here and want to fly out, because what the airlines are interested in is bi-directional traffic. They don't want people just going one way and then, an empty plane going back the other way. And that's specifically for these low-cost direct airlines. And we've actually been tilling a lot of ground with them, and they're interested, but there's this pilot shortage. I'm convinced if there wasn't a pilot shortage right now, not only would we have Delta back, but we'd probably have a third airline here. So again, we're punching above our weight level. We're doing very good. And that leads us into our capital improvements. If you look at the map, you can see all the crazy colors on there, but those colors generally represent 5-year periods of what we're doing. That map was established after we did a master plan update. We started in 2016 and kind of slapped the table on it in 2018. But all those different colors are different year periods, 5-year periods. The pink on there is the closest 5 years, and then it goes to the blue, and then the green, and the orange I call aspirational on there. That represents about $82 million worth of work, again, back in then-year dollars of 2018. Right now, to this point in the last 5 years, we've collected and are investing, will have invested when we get done with the terminal expansion, a little over $50 million. So we're more than halfway there, but of course things cost more now. That's probably a $100 million plan. But we're doing it. We have modest, measured growth and projections and plans, and that's what the FAA likes to see, strategic plans and capital improvement plans, and we've done very well. The new fire station that we christened about 1.5 years ago, that was from a FAA supplemental grant. We competed for that and got that, $5.2 million. Just a month ago, we competed for some of the bipartisan infrastructure law money. We just got $5 million. We competed for that. There were 3 airports in North Carolina that got money. One was Charlotte, one was Asheville, and one was New Bern. That's kind of putting us on the map there as well, that we're competing at that level for that money. This terminal improvement will be a $26 million improvement. We'll add 10,000 new square feet. We'll refurbish 19,000 square feet. Most of the circulation movement area will create a better space for TSA. Current design was pre-9/11 design, kind of shoehorned in there. We'll open that up for safety and efficiency. The other things we're working on is capacity and throughput. FAA likes to fund that, as well as updating our ADA standards. 2 of our 4 gates will have passenger jet bridges. That'll make it easier for our residents and visitors to board and deboard airplanes. There'll be a service animal relief area off the side of the hold area, somewhere that your dog can go outside. All those modern amenities, as well as being energy efficient. That's a big part of it, and that's how we competed for and got that latest $5 million. All those were tenets of that grant that you had to meet those in order to be eligible for that money. So we feel like we're doing a lot. If you look at the lower right-hand corner where the kind of bright green and the blue road around it, that's the terminal area. And that was, again, a very well thought out plan that we had to redo the tarmac, the parking places for the aircraft. We added 50% more space, changed asphalt to concrete for the new heavier jets. That's just the way the industry's going. Then we created the fire station, which opened up space in the terminal, allows us to do some of that expansion in there, so we didn't have to spend as much on the terminal expansion. And by only adding 10,000 feet, we materially increased the capacity and throughput of the terminal. So all this is planned out, put together. We're moving, prior military, I call it, we're moving from target to target, and we're doing well. The FAA trusts us. The state level, we have a lot of support by the legislators there. We're doing well there. We recently landed a Golden Leaf grant for $753,000, and that's if you look in the lower left area, those orange splotches are buildings and taxiways. We call that our corporate aerospace development area. And that $753,000 grant is to put utilities into that area. Right now, we have an application in through Commerce for another $1 million to put the road in there. And we have interested clients, or I should say that the county economic development has interested clients with $20 million worth of capital that's looking to build aviation-related spaces. So we're moving on all fronts. The air service is disappointing, but I think we're holding our own. The fact that we landed new service, even though it was only weekly service from American direct from DCA during a time where airports are still losing service, period, is a big feather in our cap. Just this month, we've gone to 5 flights a day, one of them on a larger airplane. That's increased our seat capacity by 84%. We have it all through the summer. So what does that mean? Well, the airlines are all about, what have you done for me lately? You know, we got to have people here flying on there, and we're doing a lot of marketing that way. And again, it's bi-directional, it's both ways. We have people coming in, people going out. Just heard some numbers earlier today, just for instance, the one reason we landed that Washington flight, last year in 22, there were 240,000 people that visited from the Washington metro area to our CSA, our combined statistical area. That's why American looked at that and said, we could probably fill up a plane a week on that. And if we do well on that again this year, they'll look to expand the number of days and hopefully the months out of the year. So again, that's people coming down there from here. But what does that provide? It provides people the opportunity to go from here up there, again, bi-directional. So we want to be a great destination. We have a great beach. People can't all keep going to Florida on these low-cost airlines. We have a lot of low-cost airlines interested. It's a matter of scale. That was mentioned before, density and scale. So those are the things that keep your airport up and operating and provide more service to the citizens that live here to be able to go to different places. So it's a two-way street. We're proud to serve the community as the airport. The airport's just the airport, but it's for the community, and nothing we like more is to do anything that we can to serve the community as the airport. Any questions?
Board have questions? Andy, I just have one for you. You said you guys have, for the airport authority has a 100-year lease with the county. Is there any cost to that lease, or is that $1 a year?
What, just $1?
$1 a year, okay. Well, we thank you for the presentation. Thanks for all you do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, if I have kept all my my doodling right, I think we're on number 13 now. Presentation by Bradham's Legacy in consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submission of an application for a rural transformation grant on behalf of Bradham's Legacy. I think John Harrelson is going to make this presentation.
Good evening. Yes, I'm John Harrelson. I'm the chairman of Bradham's Legacy, and thank you for having us here this evening. And thank you for bringing Flat Stanley. I want to start by giving some history to this whole process, and hopefully that will give some clarification as well. I really feel like this is an exciting time in New Bern. I feel like this is an exciting opportunity for New Bern. It reminds me of the 1950s when a group of women from this town got together and decided to do a reconstruction of Tryon Palace, because that was an epic event in New Bern's history and really changed the course of New Bern's history, I would say. And it was mentioned earlier, you go up and down Highway 17 and see some of the historic towns up and down, and they're beautiful towns, but none of them have Tryon Palace and New Bern's history. And I think that Pepsi is of significance, much like Tryon Palace. So the journey that this has been, it started in 1893. That is the year that Caleb Bradham invented Brad's drink. And it was mentioned earlier that Pepsi started in 1898. That's the year that he renamed it Pepsi-Cola. And I've done the math. I don't think I could do it in my head. But this is the 125th anniversary of Pepsi. So it's a big year for PepsiCo. And I think you all probably have seen the ads on TV and whatnot that they've come out with a brand new logo. It looks a heck of a lot like the old logo to me, But anyhow, I think that they have big plans for their 125th, and I'm sure they plan for 125 more. In 2006, a woman named Indra Nui became the chairman of Pepsi. She was the second woman of color to become a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That was a pretty historic event. Indra is important to New Bern also, because it was in 2013 that at her direction, Pepsi relocated their annual meeting here to New Bern. And then, unfortunately, 2019, I think most of us, or rather 2020, the 2019 annual meeting had to be canceled on account of COVID. And COVID has kept Pepsi and their meeting away from here since that time. Also back then, a private collector approached Pepsi about donating their collection to Pepsi. It was valued at in excess of $1 million. Pepsi already had a collection at their headquarters that wasn't on display and wasn't being used. Pepsi, having been here in New Bern for their annual meeting, was familiar. They were here because it's the birthplace. Their chief executive and other senior executives became familiar with New Bern, fell in love with it, like I think most of us have, and they decided, we've got this donor who wants to give us a collection. New Bern, the birthplace of Pepsi, would be a perfect place to do that. Pepsi was already represented on the Tryon Palace Commission, and I think that they started talking with the palace about what opportunities there might be. And it was about that time that Swiss Bear became involved, because any kind of donation like that was not going to be given to the state. It was going to be given to a 501c3. There was no Pepsi 501c3. Bradham's legacy didn't exist. So Swiss Bear was kind of a placeholder while this discussion was had about what potential would there be for creating this museum. And Pepsi had planned on having an announcement at their annual meeting in 2020 prior to COVID shutting that meeting down. And they had hoped to have a big hoopla and bring celebrities and everything into town to announce that they were optimistic about creating a Pepsi museum here in New Bern. That got backburnered with COVID. They had Zoom annual meetings, and they haven't been back yet. But in 2020 also, that donor made a visit to New Bern and looked around the town, because Pepsi had suggested that New Bern and a potential museum here would fit their needs and be beneficial to all parties. So Pepsi also has come out and said, and I'm quoting directly from a press release, that PepsiCo firmly supports the idea of a museum that will celebrate Pepsi in its birthplace. So that's kind of the history of Pepsi and how we got to where we are. And now Bradham's legacy, the 501c3. Bradham's legacy, the application to create that was submitted to the IRS in 2021. And in June of 2022, the PepsiCo Foundation approved a $750,000 grant to Bradham's legacy in order to further the exploration of this Pepsi museum and cover some of the costs in trying to create it. Bradham's legacy had its very first board meeting in January of this year. And in the last year and a half or so, there have been in excess of $100,000 in private contributions to Bradham's legacy, in addition to that $750,000 that's come in from the PepsiCo Foundation. So as the Crime Stopper guy said, said earlier, I'm not here to ask you for money. I think that's a misconception, because what we're here to ask you is to make a grant application on behalf of Bradham's legacy. The grant would be through money that was set aside in the American Rescue Plan, which was a COVID program that was set up by President Biden in, I think, 2021. That American Rescue Plan, or ARP as it's often referred to, allocated $50 million to North Carolina, which allocated that for these rural transformation grants. Rural transformation grants are very specific, that they are only used for economic development. And the rural transformation part depends on the tier classification of the counties, and also the fact that downtown New Bern is an opportunity zone is a positive check mark in the review of these application grants. So the last, Bradham's Legacy made the request that the cities must be the sponsor, or the applicants. 501c3s cannot apply for these. Only governments can apply for these. And we sent a letter back in March of 23 requesting that the city apply for this grant. And that was only about 6 weeks after our very first board meeting. And the final round of applications are due by May 1st of this year. So there's a short fuse on this. We have a lot of optimism about how our grant will be received, because it's very much along the lines of what they are looking for. I think we all have heard about the impact of Tryon Palace. Who knew spam could be such an economic driver? But the impact of this would be enormous, and I think that the state recognizes that. The Secretary of Natural Resources, when this idea first emerged in 2019 from Pepsi and Tryon Palace, the secretary who oversees Tryon Palace was very in favor of this, and in fact their office helped generate the structure that has been created with an outside 501c3 working in conjunction with Tryon Palace. So the state is aware of this and look upon it very favorably. One more time, there's zero money being asked for from the city at this point. We are asking for the city to make the application so that these grant funds would flow through the city toward trying to secure a site, a building or a site for the museum. We feel like the museum logically belongs in downtown. Downtown is where the original Pepsi facilities were, where the Pepsi store now in the original location of Caleb Bradham's drugstore. It's close to Tryon Palace, an accredited museum that owns one of the two collections now. The other collection is in the process of being donated by Pepsi to the museum. And it's also close to hotels, shops, restaurants, downtown, the place that tourists are interested in walking around and visiting, in addition to places like Tryon Palace, the Fireman's Museum, and hopefully a Pepsi museum. The city would be involved in the discussion, the decision of the site. There have been a number of different sites discussed, and there is no decision on that. That really is a decision for you all. So the city would have very much a voice in this process. The city would have no future obligation after the grant. This request is simply for the grant. All of the work on this project to date has been done by volunteers or pro bono. There's been no one paid any monies up to this point for any work product or anything. If we get the grant, we would have a process and have RFQs for architectural firms to submit their proposal. That process can't be started yet because we don't have a site. That's contingent upon city's thoughts. And also, the architectural firm that might be ideal would depend somewhat on whether it's new construction on a vacant lot or whether it's renovation of an already existing structure. Different architectural firms have different strengths and weaknesses. Bradham's legacy would be responsible for future fundraising, and with the grant money from the PepsiCo Foundation, and this grant, should it be applied for and received, is not covering 100%, but there are many other organizations, individuals, including PepsiCo executives and former executives, including the bottlers of PepsiCo, of which there are a number around the nation, including collectors. I mean, we have some collectors here this evening who have driven, hours to get here, and thank you for coming. Didn't know you were all going to be here. The impact of the museum, in the report that you all received, I think there may have been some confusion. We talked about the fact that the museum would create 4 full-time jobs and a couple of full-time equivalents or part-time jobs. And then on the last page was furnished information that came from the Craven County Tourism and Development Authority. And they have a program that they can run information through, much like the airport presentation, that there's a magnifier. When tourists come to town, they spend money directly at the museum, which would pay those people, but they also buy meals, they visit stores in town, they get hotel rooms, etc. That information on the last page of that presentation discussed 13 full-time and 34 part-time jobs. And it said that the estimate from, again, the Craven County Tourism and Development Authority is that it would generate in excess of $6 million in incremental sales in downtown New Bern. So in conclusion of all this, we're asking you all to make application for a $950,000 grant, which we feel would plant seed for an enormous economic engine. And there's no future financial commitment on the part of the city. This is strictly asking you to do the grant application. Pepsi is one of the top 10 global food companies. It's an enormous corporation. It was born here. It's a New Bern native. They support this. I think it would be tragic to not pursue this opportunity for the city and the local economy and the jobs that it would create for the citizens. Having a second attraction, I think quite likely of the caliber that Triumph Palace is, would be awesome for the city of New Bern. And we think those people would be good tourists to have, families as was mentioned, and that they'll bring their dollars to New Bern. A bunch of them might even fly in. And that's just an opportunity too good to be true to not ask for the free money that the government through their COVID programs is granting.
All right. Board questions. Alderman Kinsey.
I'm supporting what you're doing. What the individuals come up tonight and spoken, it was well spoken. But I like to know and understand the involvement of the city. Whenever you apply for a grant, you become responsible for that money. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. With that being said, you said tiers, that the grant money will be sort of broken down into some sort of tiers that the area, what did you mean by that?
No, there's no tiers to the grant money. The grant money up to $950,000, that's the maximum that can be applied for. That's what we would ask you to apply for. However much money came in, I think the city's obligation would be fulfilled when that money was spent, and the expectation, the hope would be that that money would be spent on a structure to house the museum, or that it would be applied to securing a facility.
So, once the grant would be written, submitted, comes back, and we write the check to Bradham's foundation, that's where the money would go towards?
No. The money would go toward a physical plant that would be owned by the city.
So, what plan do we have in place, Foster, when we write the grant? That's what he just said, the plan. What is the plan?
No, I said it would go toward a physical plant.
Oh, a plant.
Yes, like it would go toward either building a new building on a vacant lot or toward renovating an existing building that the city might already have.
Okay,
There's no location that's been selected or committed, and that's the discussion that needs to be had.
So what I'm trying to understand is, once the grant, we're writing the grant, what are we, do we have a plan in place? We don't have anything in place that we're writing it for. Is money available, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what are we writing it, I mean, is it a plan in place? I'm trying to understand.
We're writing a grant asking for money to secure a property to house the museum.
Okay.
So Alderman Kinsey, I think the grant is going to be written to be flexible enough to where, while Bradham's Legacy may not have an idea whether they're looking at an individual piece of property or an existing building, that grant will be flexible enough to where, if they do receive this grant, if the board authorizes us to write it, they will have, and then they've got several years to work through this, so they've got time to plan that if that is the case.
Okay.
So they're not tied in with the grant one thing or another. It will be flexible where they can make adjustments if they need to. And also, the way the grants work with the city, we would not write, if we received this grant for $950,000, we would not turn around and write a check for $950,000 to Bradham's Legacy. We would basically serve as the fiduciary agent, and we would be a pass-through. The bills would come in for whatever it would be up to that $950,000 amount. We would pay those things, and we would be responsible for submitting the paperwork to the state to reconcile that.
Yes, and after that, we're not responsible for anything else.
That's correct. The city would own the property, and Bradham's Legacy would plan on entering into a lease, presumably a discounted lease, much like the airport leases the land from the county. And then Bradham's Legacy would operate the museum and pay the bills.
So what you're saying is that the property that is purchased with that money, we're going to own the property?
Well, I'm not saying that you would purchase property. The city hasn't said, and there's been a number of different properties discussed as potential locations. The old Fireman's Museum has been discussed. Property on Hancock Street has been discussed. Someone has thrown out the idea of the depot. None of these have been decided upon. They're all, that's a conversation to be had. There's kind of a chicken egg here. It's hard to come up with what you can't write a lease for what you don't know you're renting, kind of a thing. And obviously, one of those is an existing, two of those would be existing buildings. One of those is a vacant land. So you can't hire an architect if you don't know what the project is that you're hiring them for. So at the end of the day, the city would still own the property, but it would have been gifted $950,000, hopefully, to improve the property that the city already owns.
So it's three things here that I'm hearing. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm understanding clearly that the grant, we own some property it's a possibility that we can purchase some property, correct?
Correct?
Then it's another piece of property. Which one out of those three are we prepared to pay for?
That's the discussion that has to happen.
Are you finished?
We don't presume to tell the aldermen how to spend their, how to utilize assets of the city.
So we are playing a role in this. It's not that I don't want to see this happen. I'm trying to make sure that I'm making the right decision, me. I'm not speaking for no one else but me. We have a building in place. We're looking at a piece of property. We're looking at 3 pieces of property. I guess
It might be
maybe
none of
more.
those. Yeah,
Maybe more.
correct.
And out of those, a decision will be made based on that. And then where's the rest of the money gonna come? If it comes to the upfit, what size of the building you're looking at?
The building we expect to be in the about 6,000 to 8,000 square foot range.
Okay. So do you understand where I'm coming from? You're a businessman, so you know the decision has to be made based on the information that you have, that you're looking at, what you're going to purchase, what you're going to buy, how you're going to upfit it. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand, John, that's all. I'm not trying to give you a hard time.
No, I don't feel like you're giving me a hard time. I
Okay,
feel like
I just want
we're
to
not
make,
connecting.
I just want to connect.
Yep.
You know, I
So-
heard the voices of the people, what everybody has an interest is. My interest is the same, but I'm the one that's signing the note. You know, they're not. I'm the one that has to make a decision out of the 7 people on the board. And I just want to be clear in what I'm doing. That's all. That's all I'm trying to do.
So
Alderman Best?
would it help
Yes.
if I paint 2 different scenarios?
Repeat that again, please.
Would it be helpful if I try and paint 2 different scenarios?
Go ahead.
So one scenario would be that there's a vacant piece of land that the city already owns.
Mm-hmm.
We've got $750,000 from the PepsiCo Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
We can hire architects, they can draw up a plan to build a building, and we can use that $950,000 grant money that comes from the state via the Fed, from the Fed via the state, use that $950,000 toward constructing a building that an architect would design for the purpose of a museum on a vacant piece of land that the city owns. So now the city owns a building on a piece of land that previously was vacant that will have the Pepsi Museum move in and generate tourism and tax revenues for the city. That's one option. A second option would be, there's an existing building, let's say the Firemen's Museum. The city owns that. You get that $950,000 grant, you go into the Firemen's Museum, you have $950,000 of upfit and improvement. You open the museum, you generate tourism and tax revenues in the city of New Bern.
I disagree on that because you don't know yet how much it's going to cost to upfit that building. It costs going up every
It could
day.
cost more, that's correct.
Because we did an elevator that started out with $1 million and it cost $4 million.
I had tried to address that in my presentation, that Bradham's legacy would be responsible for further fundraising that could include things like the PepsiCo executives, could include things like the Pepsi bottlers, could include local businesses, local citizens, the collectors organizations, et cetera. There have been a lot of fundraisers done in New Bern for a lot of different purposes, and they've pretty much all been successful.
But the fundraising hasn't started its process yet.
No, and it's very difficult to fundraise for something you don't know what it's going to be, where it's going to be, et cetera.
I understand.
You need to have a plan before you can raise money. before you can hire architects, et cetera.
Right, right. So we are just taking the money that's coming in there to use that and not knowing how much we're gonna need to finish the total package, correct?
Well, we have a pretty good idea what it's going to cost, because we have a pretty good idea of what construction costs are and things like that. We've got $2 million worth of collection to put on display. We've got a pretty good idea of how much tickets are charged for those types of exhibits, and pretty good idea of how many guests those types of exhibits generate.
What would a ticket cost?
About $8. I think that was in the presentation that you all got.
Okay, okay.
Alderman Kinsey, I'm going to get Alderman Best. We can always come back to you, but she's itching to ask a question, I think.
All right, go right ahead.
You finished, Alderman Kennedy?
No, you go right ahead. I'm cool.
Foster, in reading the material, I didn't see anywhere where it said that with this grant, will there be a match required by the city?
There's no match required for this.
No match required, okay. So who's writing this grant? Is it being written in-house, or are we hiring a grant writer?
If the board authorizes this, we would work with our grant writer to do this. There would be a nominal fee for her to write that.
Okay, so we would have to hire in a grant writer.
Yes, we would use our grant writer.
Okay, and what is that normal fee? Is it a percentage or something?
It's an hourly rate that she charges for that. So it could be a couple $1,000 to write the grant.
Okay. By no means am I not wanting to see a Pepsi museum come to New Bern. I think, we want to move our city forward. I want to see our city thrive, and I think the Pepsi Museum will be a great attraction to New Bern. But you had mentioned that you said right now that there's, at this point in time, there is nothing asked of the city. But I'm looking at it from a standpoint of down the line. Is it going to be factored in there, or is it going to be where revenue expense is from the city going to be? Is there going to be a subsidy required down the line from the city with this museum?
Not based on our predictions of the museum's success. And the city is not making any obligation. You're not making any legal commitment to any future funding.
Okay. But see, when we as a city will own that building, so who's going to be responsible for the upkeep, the maintenance? Is that going to be an expense on the city? Is that going to come from PepsiCo? Are you going to take up those?
PepsiCo is not a party to this.
Okay, Bradham's legacy.
Well, and this is part of the lease terms that would be negotiated. I would envision that, the city would ask the Bradham's legacy to handle the maintenance and upkeep on the property. That would be pretty standard.
Okay. Another question, within the material that I read, I see that it's saying it's a economic development. It's going to be some economic incentives for the 5 Points area. So I can't see how is that going to factor in? And you may not know this, but I read this in the material. So how is that going to factor in for the 5 Points area, that there's going to be some incentives from this museum going to the 5 Points area?
Well,
Is it just going to be those 5 or 6 blocks that's going down Pollock Streets, or is this going to be Broad Street, Queen Street, the 5 Points area?
Well, again, no location has been selected at this point, but
No.
I think I would just point out that anything that is good for New Bern is good for all of the districts, I would argue.
No, in reference to this grant, it says rural transformation grant, okay, and it includes the 5 Points area. So how is that going to be some incentives coming from this museum that's going to be kicked back, or how is it going to be used within the 5 Points area?
I'm not sure about the reference
Well,
to
Foster,
5 Points
do you
in
know
there.
that question, answer to that question?
No, ma'am, I don't.
So why would they put the 5 Points area within this grant?
I don't know, we would have to,
I
we would
would
have to look
I
at
would
that
need to
information,
see
see.
what you're referencing. I'm not sure what the sentence is that you're referring to.
The museum, well, let's just move forward here. The museum is in place. We're having tourists come in. We're making money from the museum. So this money is going into, you're renting the building from the city for, I'll say $1. Okay? So then from the revenues that the museum brings in, what kind of incentive is it going to give to the common taxpayer, not just downtown businesses, restaurants, bars, retails? What is it going to give back to the citizens of the city?
So the incentive for all of New Bern is that you have guests who come to town. I think it was mentioned that it's over $10 per night per guest is paid from the hotel occupancy tax. That goes into the city's coffers. So when you're looking at providing services to citizens throughout the city, those services are paid for in part from property taxes and in part from sales taxes and in part from occupancy taxes. So it's to me, it's a case of a rising tide lifts all ships.
Okay, I'm not even gonna dive deeper into that because I see the downtown area for as the revenue is concerned is totally different from incentives that's gonna be poured out to the citizens, the taxpayers, the citizens of this city. But, so, is this, would this, since you're 501c3, would this museum be tax exempt?
Yes.
Okay. So then there again, what tax base is that gonna bring to the city?
Well,
Just the sales tax.
The city will own the museum, yes, exactly. Sales tax and
Okay.
taxes on meals and tourist expenditures in retail shops and in hotels. You know,
John,
it's a lot
I
of
just,
money.
I want to make a statement.
But, sir, I'm not finished yet, Mayor. Excuse me. This is just questions that I have to ask, okay? That I wanted some answers to. Because I don't, in the future, if the city writes this grant of $950,000, what responsibility, as Alderman Kinsey was saying as well, what kind of responsibility will the city have if you apply for this grant and this grant don't come through? It's just knocked out of the waters, correct? There's no responsibility on the city whatsoever.
Correct.
We wrote the grant, we paid for the grant writer, that's the end of it.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And like I said before, by no means am not wanting to see this Pepsi Museum come to the city, because when it was first talked about with members of the previous board, I was all for it. But I just had some questions. I have more other questions, but I just don't think that right now is even relevant to ask. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Best, I was going to make a comment. The airport that just made a presentation, the airport does not sit within the city limits. So from a property tax standpoint, we don't get any property tax off the airport. But I think we would all agree that the airport certainly has a positive economic impact on the city of New Bern, even though it's not sitting in the city of New Bern. I think the same could be said for car dealerships that are not located within the city of New Bern. City of New Bern shares that sales tax revenue throughout the county of Craven. That's how it gets distributed. So I understand your point, and it's well taken. But as far as I think you were inferring that there wouldn't be any property tax revenue because it was tax exempt. But we would own the building anyway, so there wouldn't be property tax anyway, even if the Bradham's legacy was not tax exempt.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Alderman Brinson.
Mr. Harrelson, I know I can't speak for this board, but I want to apologize personally for this board turning your way 2 weeks ago when we had the opportunity to hear from you and have this discussion. I was not upset that the decision was postponed, but I want to go on record as having said that this board needs to present as much information to the public as we can, as quickly as we can. And so all of this conversation could have been had 2 weeks ago, and then people could have submitted their comments and their questions to us, but instead we've wasted 2 weeks. So I just want to go on record as having said that.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
no disrespect to
I
you,
didn't.
Alderman Brinson, but in the past, this board, well, not this board, the prior boards and boards before that, there's been numerous times presentations, people can come forward, but it was delayed or postponed or put off. So this is not maybe the first time for this
I'm not-
board,
yes,
but, you know.
I can only
it's-
speak
yeah,
for myself.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't have problem
It has happened.
postponing the decision,
Yeah.
but the fact that we're asking a lot of hard questions tonight, we could have had that discussion 2 weeks ago.
Or maybe we, as some members of this board, felt like at the time that wasn't what we wanted to do. That's why we asked for postponement to another date. That is our right.
And that's why we're here tonight. Alderman Astor.
So,
John, thank you for your presentation. I too, for the record, was kind of disappointed that we had people from the Pepsi collectors to travel very long ways to get here just to be turned away and delayed for 2 weeks, when we was going to do nothing other than do a presentation, just like you have done tonight, to tell us what the Bradham's legacy would be about. Yeah, I sit here tonight and I listen to probably close to 20, maybe 30 people come up and speak in favor of this museum. I never heard the first person come up and speak in opposition of this museum. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it needs to be located in our downtown district. I think it's going to help the Tryon Palace. I think it's going to help the Firemen's Museum, the Civil War Museum that the Palace has. I just think it's going to be wonderful. I mean, if we can get, I can't remember how many thousand visitors at the Spam Museum, we certainly can get the same amount at our Pepsi Museum, especially with the number of collectors that showed up tonight, that some of them drove 4 hours to get here. You know, just out of curiosity, I just wanted to ask how many, do they have a number of how many are in the club, in the collectors club? Do you have any idea?
500.
500?
All over the world.
Okay. So, and I'm sure all 500 of those will be here within the first few months of this place opening up. Pardon me? Yeah. So, you know, that being said, this is still going to be able to open up for discussion, but I would like to make a motion that we consider adopting a resolution authorizing the submission of an application for a rural transportation grant on behalf of Bradham's legacy.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. We still have not made our rounds for all of the aldermen.
You still have an opportunity to
Yes,
discuss
sir.
it.
Thank you so much. Since we're going on record tonight, I'd like to go on record as the person who made the motion. When I approached the dais, there was an updated plan that was presented that I did not have time to read. It was at almost time for the meeting to begin. I cannot make an informed decision to represent the citizens of this city without having information. I believe equally so every time we mention the term city, we're talking over 31,000 citizens. And so those citizens must be represented in our decisions. Let it go on record also that I believe that the Pepsi Museum would be a wonderful addition to our city. I don't believe that we're here tonight to say that specifically. I'll speak for myself. I'm not here tonight to say that it is not an important legacy to New Bern, because it is, and I was totally in favor of the Pepsi Museum, but what I was not in favor of is not having the opportunity to read the document that was set before me. That would be a disservice to myself as an alderman, as well as the disservice to the citizens of our city. Again, the information was important. Even though the presentation might have been made in the previous meeting, I still needed the opportunity to read the documents, to look at the information. And I believe that every alderman deserves the right to do so, so that we can make an informed decision. Again, we represent over 31,000 citizens, and we want to make sure that every voice has value and that every voice is heard. And so in light of that, I still had a couple of questions. I want to refer back to a question that was asked. You were saying, Mr. Harrison, and again, thank you for your presentation. You were saying that you were not aware of the 5 points being a part, or where it was mentioned in the project summary. It's mentioned on page 3. In the project summary, it's mentioned on page 5, also in the project summary. And that was one of the main questions that I had, again, was with the 5 points and the projected $50 million revenue that was spoken of. It's not in this updated version, but it was in the documents that we received last week, that there was a projection of $50,000 in revenue that would come into our city annually. And again, my question still remains, how does that trickle down to the 5 Points community? And I know you might not be able to address that tonight. You said that you weren't aware of it, but that is a very pointed question that I would like to have answered. The other thing that I wanted to ask equally so, in our last meeting, we had a presentation made by the Juneteenth committee, and they also made mention of economic impact, though it might be on a much, much smaller scale than what we're talking about here, but still visitors come to our city, and they are scheduled again to have an event in the 5 Points community. My question is, tonight, has there been any collaboration between the Swiss Bear and the Juneteenth committee? Has there been any collaboration and working together, being that we're on the same page with the same cause to provide economic impact in our city, no matter whether it's a large scale or a small scale?
I'm unaware of any communication between those two organizations at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn.
Thank you, Alderman Royal. I would be, Swiss Bear, I would be more than happy to work collaboratively with the Juneteenth committee. 2 years ago, after the first Juneteenth celebration, there was some communication asking for some assistance, not right at that moment, but maybe in the fall of the year, in terms of helping them to establish a program to sell banners. And at that point, it was left that they would get back to me for that assistance, and I had not heard anything from them. I understand how busy you get when you're putting on some sort of an event like that, so I didn't really think too much about it, but more than happy to assist if that is what the organizers of Juneteenth would like to happen.
Thank you so very much. Ms. Lynn, you know, the two of us sat at the table.
This has nothing to do with the Pepsi Museum. We're getting ready to talk about Juneteenth in a few minutes.
I'm done with the Juneteenth, sir. But we sat at the table, Ms. Lynn. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And we talked about having a seat at the table and how important it was. And I know you reflect back on those meetings. And so I just think it's so important that all voices are heard and that all of us have input when it comes to the Pepsi Museum. Again, when you mention city, we're talking 31,000 citizens. And I thank you, Mr. Harrison, for telling us how the economic trickle down would come and where we would get opportunities for economic development throughout the city. I appreciate that too. But thank you so very much.
that all you had, Alderman Lloyd?
Just a moment,
Okay.
Mayor. Let me flip my page. Thank you so very much. That would be all.
Okay.
John, thank you for being here tonight, giving the presentation. I'd just like to run through some basics very quickly, and then also just address some questions that have been raised. At this point in time, as you stated, all that is being asked of the city is that we approved the submission of the application for the Rural Transportation Grant in the amount of $950,000. At this point, assuming that that action is taken, we have no idea at this point whether the city would receive $950,000 or something less than that. But let's assume that it's $950,000 that we receive. It's your position as chairman of Bradham's Legacy that that would be the contribution made by the city, in addition to working to identify a location for a Pepsi museum. There are some city-owned lots that could be used. The city has the old Fireman's Museum, so we own the property and we own the building. There is the possibility that if that site were chosen, then the grant money would be used to improve the building to bring it up to a state-of-the-art standard for a museum. The possibility exists that that grant money could be used to purchase another piece of property that is currently privately held, and to then, to whatever extent we could utilize that funding to provide upgrades to an existing building, again, not city-owned, but privately owned, to upgrade that. The point being that at this point in time, there would be no taxpayer request or no funding request for the citizens of New Bern to pay for anything towards this museum. Is that correct?
Not at this time, no.
Not at this time. Doesn't mean that at some future date, you'd be coming back and maybe making requests for additional funding, but at this point in time, you're not asking for that.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's assume that the location for the museum is a location that is owned by the city, and whether there's a building on it or whether the grant money would be put towards the building. That property would end up being tax exempt because it is owned by the city, and we don't pay taxes to ourselves. So it is a tax exempt property. There would be a lease that would have to be drawn up, that would be entered into between the city and Bradham's Legacy Foundation. That lease agreement would address a whole host of issues, one being what the lease cost would be to Bradham's Legacy to utilize a city-owned property and building. I would assume that Bradham's Legacy would be looking for $1 a year. If I were in your shoes, I'd be asking for $1 a year lease. Doesn't mean that the city would grant that, but I would presume that that's what your request would ultimately be. The lease agreement would also address who is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep and repair of the building and the land. And presumably, whatever cost that is would be Bradham's Legacy, correct? Not the city's.
I would assume.
It'd be Bradham's Legacy.
I would assume it would be
Yeah.
Bradham's, but as you said, that would be negotiated in the lease. I would assume
Right.
that
I
would be
mean,
the
that would
city's
be addressed
position.
in the lease.
Correct.
Any utility costs, insurance costs for the operation of the museum, again, it would be addressed in the lease agreement, And that would be, presumably be Bradham's Legacy would cover those costs as well, not the city.
Presumably, yes.
In information that we have received previously, and this is where I think some of the confusion came in, it identified Bradham's Legacy Board and Swiss Bear being involved in this effort. Specifically, it had Swiss Bear identified as the fiduciary agent. That information was subsequently revised in an updated document that we received. I'd just like, for clarification, that Bradham's Legacy would be the fiduciary agent for the museum.
That's correct. Swiss Bear was simply.
Swiss Bear would have no involvement in that whatsoever.
That's correct. They were a placeholder, if you will, until Bradham's Legacy was created. And sometimes creating 501c3s takes a long time with the IRS. They're closely scrutinized because of a history of people abusing them.
And the earlier information also identified Swiss Bear as taking a role in the raising of private funds, if you will, from private donors, from foundations. But in the updated document that we received, it has Bradham's Legacy Board taking on that role. So I just like to clarify, is that the role that Bradham's Legacy would be involved in?
Bradham's Legacy would definitely be involved in that and would be the point of the spear on fundraising. Having said that, Swiss Bear has historically gotten behind all projects that are economic benefits to downtown New Bern. And it's if the museum were to be within the footprint of Swiss Bear, I would assume that they would be cooperative in fundraising, but that would not be their responsibility. That would be Bradham's Legacy.
And again, I don't see any problem with Swiss Bear working directly with Bradham's Legacy Board in that effort. I think it would be smart to do that, but again, it was because the previous information had some set of information in it, and that was changed in the latest document.
Yeah,
So
the first round of the document that was distributed was outdated, and that document was not up to date with the formation and the initial founding meeting, if you will, of Bradham's Legacy. It also contained on the economic development page, Alderman Royal, some numbers that had been erroneous that came from the computer program used by the Craven Tourism and Development. So they had been some either data entry errors or a problem with the program, and when that was discovered, that was corrected. So the 50 million that you were referring to was a mistake, and the reason for the update was to correct that. And that was information that was provided to us.
So is there another number?
Your latest version has the correct number. I believe it's 6 million.
Thank you, sir.
to date, and correct me if I'm wrong, PepsiCo Foundation is the philanthropic arm of the Pepsi organization, Pepsi Company?
Correct.
Okay, so Bradham's Legacy has received a commitment of $750,000 from the PepsiCo Foundation.
Correct.
And that money will be used to pay for architectural services in the design of a building, or if an existing building is selected, then in the retrofitting of that building to meet museum design standards.
Yes, that money is available for legal, engineering, architecture, the broad range of things.
Right. And then there would be a second firm brought in to actually do the designing of the displays?
Yes, they're two very distinct things. Architects, and I mentioned earlier also that some architects are better at creating new structures, and some architects have made a career out of renovating existing structures. So there would be an architect responsible for the physical building, and then there are companies that specialize in the creation of exhibits. And so, for example, if you go to Tryon Palace and look at the exhibits that they have on, say, Shift's stores, how they created turpentine and tar and things like that back in the 18th century, you will see interactive exhibits, etc. Those were not designed by the architects of the building. There are firms that specialize in that. And much of the interior of the building would actually fall under the exhibit umbrella rather than the architect's umbrella.
Part of the overall concern that I have is that while the philanthropic arm of Pepsi has committed $750,000 towards this effort, the parent company has yet to commit anything other than a desire to see a museum. So I would strongly urge in any way possible that an effort be made to get the parent company to financially contribute towards this project. Because the cost to build a state-of-the-art museum, I suspect, is going to be very high, especially in this time of inflationary cost increases for general construction, let alone a very specialized state-of-the-art museum facility. So it is going to take a lot of money. And I would hope that the parent company would step forward and commit a sizable amount of money towards this project. But that would be up to yourself and potentially Swiss Bear to try to convince them of that. Again, looking forward, any staff would be employees under Bradham's Legacy Board, not the city.
That's correct.
There were a number of questions that Alderman Kinsey received from a resident in his ward. I think a number of those issues have already been addressed. Alderman Kinsey, I don't know, were you satisfied that the questions that were provided to you
Pretty much.
have been
Pretty much.
addressed tonight?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you. You're very kind with your words.
One last question that I have, or would just a request from the city attorney. And again, this is just looking forward. The mayor and city manager sit on the Bradham Legacy Board as representatives of the city. Given the fact that the mayor is going to be voting on issues, i.e. voting on the submission of an application for the Regional Transformation Grant application, and potentially in the future also voting on decisions that need to be made regarding a Pepsi museum. Is there any conflict of interest that exists, since he is sitting on the Bradham Legacy Board, who are ultimately going to be coming back to the city, making requests, and then being in a position of needing to vote on some of those requests?
Potentially, not tonight at this point, because we're not making any allocation of city funds to an entity that he serves on. But in theory, going forward, it could be, and something that we need to be mindful of for sure.
Okay, so they will be if those issues arise, they will be addressed at that point.
Like each of you serve on various boards, so we're always monitoring whether you're sitting on a nonprofit and allocating yourself, the board that you represent, monies. That's what presents the conflict.
I just want to be clear, when he says conflict of interest, he's talking about conflict of interest from sitting on a nonprofit board, not a personal conflict
Not a
of interest.
personal.
Correct.
I just want to be clear.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay,
Forgive me.
thank
That's
you.
exactly right, yes.
Okay. And the fact that the city manager also sits on the Bradham Legacy Board, no issue there.
No, sir. No, sir.
Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Astor.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Brinson.
Yes?
Alderman Prill.
Yes.
Alderman Royal.
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
John, thank you so very much.
I'd
And
like to thank all of you. I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that this is a monumental decision that will prove spectacular and bright for this city. And thank you all for your service and your vote.
thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, item... Item number 14, consider adopting a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with the cost reimbursement agreement with the FBI Task Force. Mr. Hughes.
Mayor, I'd like to ask Chief Gallagher to come up and make this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. Our enforcement strategy is to address violence and the predicate crimes and activities that impact the safety of our community. Gangs and gun violence, along with drug dealing, has a direct impact on the safety and the fear of crime here in New Bern. We are happy to have an opportunity to partner with the FBI's task force, which is located in Greenville, North Carolina. The task force will be a force multiplier in addressing violent crime. Our task force officer will continue to work out of our office, not outside of the city of New Bern. Any overtime work by the task force member will be reimbursed by the FBI. Our strategy in manning this position does not remove or replace a uniformed patrol officer that is currently in our operations division. This position will be filled by our gang detective, who is currently assigned to our investigative division. We believe that a partnership with the FBI will create additional opportunities to advance safety in our city. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have with respect to this relationship with the FBI.
Does the board have questions? Alderman Ritson.
So, with this person being sworn federally, it would then be any of our municipalities, any of our county, obviously, would have access to federal collection through that person? Is that kind of how this works, or?
Are you referring to federal asset forfeiture monies and seizures?
Not necessarily, but evidence, that sort of thing.
Well, potentially the task force member might be involved in federal investigations, but this task force will also allow us to utilize state charges and crimes associated with gang violence and other predicate crimes associated with their investigations more than likely would be state crimes and would be prosecuted in state court. It is a possibility that these crimes could go federal. It could go either way, depending on what the assistant attorney or the Craven County district attorney decides what's in the best interest of that particular criminal investigation.
Chief, do you have any idea as to the time commitment that your staff person would need to be devoting towards this?
It's difficult to say. In my conversations with the special agent in charge, he indicated that it was his desire that our TFO would focus primarily on cases that are generated in our region and our city. More than likely, the bulk of our task force officer would be local. It is a possibility they could be drawn to other investigations because they are a member of a task force outside of our region. It all depends on need.
But you're comfortable that the person can handle that without shortchanging?
Oh, absolutely. I consider this, and the documents I provided to you, this is a win-win for our organization and our city. We are drawing far more than we're giving up.
Thank you.
In my view, this is going to make us far safer.
If there's no further discussion, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the execution of a MOU and cost reimbursement agreement with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Best.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Brinson,
Yes.
Alderman Prill,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey, Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Item number 15, discuss Juneteenth holiday.
Mayor, during the March 28th Governing Board meeting, Juneteenth of New Bern made a request for the city to consider adding the Juneteenth celebration as a city holiday. After discussion, the board gave direction to staff to add this on to the April 11th meeting. So we've got a little bit of information here for you. Juneteenth became a federal holiday on June 17, 2021. Juneteenth has been recognized by the state of North Carolina since 2007, but is not currently a paid state holiday. On June 6, 2022, Governor Cooper signed Executive Order 262, which provides 8 hours of personal observance leave where cabinet agency employees can take a personal day of their choosing. A recent survey that was conducted by the North Carolina League of Municipalities outlined holidays that cities currently take, and out of 552 member cities, 167 of those cities took the survey, and those cities range from literally a few hundred all the way up to our largest cities in the state. So currently, out of all of the cities that took that survey, 48 municipalities have added Juneteenth as a paid holiday. 2 of those cities that were not in that list, and which is a total of 50 cities in the state so far that are recognized. One of those was Greenville. They have Juneteenth as a city holiday. And last week, the city of Wilmington adopted Juneteenth as a paid holiday. The majority of those cities, and you'll see this in the information I provided you, were at 12 holidays, and they increased their holidays to 13 on there. So we're happy to answer any questions you may have, and go from there.
Does the board have questions?
How did you say that the state of North Carolina was observing it as a personal day?
They don't recognize it as a paid holiday. They have given 8 hours of personal leave time, so an employee can choose whatever day they wish to observe.
Okay.
Foster, if I could, though, if I understood the information that you provided previously, it's not an across-the-board 8 hours for all state staff. it made
That's
reference
correct.
to
Cabinet level,
cabinet
agencies.
level, so that's a very small portion of the state staff
That's
that are
right.
actually getting the benefit, where you've got thousands of other state employees who are not currently receiving that, correct?
And in the executive order, it also goes on to detail that the governor recommended that other agencies adopt or volunteer similar criteria. Don't know how many of those currently do that. What we have seen on the cities, the 50 cities that currently have recognized Juneteenth as a holiday, that is what they recognize. They haven't seen any floating days or personal observance days out of those.
Alderman Brinson.
So just a question. Presuming this board either approves Juneteenth or approves personal observance leave, our salaries payment goes by fiscal year, 23, 24, and but we set our holiday schedule by calendar year. If we were to approve either one of those, when would this take effect?
When this board wants it to take effect, you have that choice.
So we would essentially have to change the calendar that has been adopted if we wanted to include it for this year.
For this year.
Then we would come back at the next meeting to do that if the board so chooses.
Are you ready? Go ahead, Alderman Best.
If the board so allows, I would like to ask these two ladies here tonight, they were the ones that initially came before this board requesting and asking for Juneteenth to be a city's paid holiday. If there's something that they may want to add or say before we all vote on this agenda item.
Is that a motion to allow them to speak?
Yes, please.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And that's, yeah, Miss Selena Massey and former Alderman Jamisha Harris. I just wanted y'all to say something because since you two were the founders of Young Urban Professionals and you've come to this board numerous years asking for Juneteenth to be a city-paid holiday, I just want to know if y'all had something additional that you might want to add in.
Board, I just want to thank you and appreciate that you guys took the time to look over the information and discuss amongst yourselves, and I hope that tonight you guys do make a decision to make it a holiday for the city so that they can, have that day, or the opposite of giving them the time to choose whatever works. We just appreciate you taking and meeting us halfway with that, so thank you so much.
Thank you all, as usual. This has been an amazing meeting, very energetic. I don't envy any of your positions up here as you listen to our citizens' concerns and celebrations. Hopefully I can end this on a positive note and say we definitely appreciate your assistance. We definitely appreciate your support. Thank you for, again, Alderman Royal for mentioning us during that conversation. I think it's important. One of the things to note, one of the nominations for this year's Juneteenth Parade Queen was actually Ms. Frazier, Livonia Frazier, who was the first African-American Pepsi model. So when we talk about history, and as the presentation prior discussed the diversity of Pepsi's board, I think it was a wonderful segue into talking about the city moving forward with something that celebrates all of our history and could incorporate future things like Pepsi and things for years to come. So again, we thank you for your time. I come here every year. I give a presentation and a wrap up to let you guys know how it went. And again, as it continues to grow, I hope that you guys consider the possibility for what it could be. And just to follow up on our collaborations, you asked about Swiss Fair. Having been a former board member of Swiss Bear, I utilized a lot of the knowledge and the relationships that we do have between downtown and uptown and crafting, 5 Points, and crafting some of the activities. We have not received direct support from Swiss Bear, but again, throughout those 10 days of celebration, we received a lot of support from around the city, and that includes some members of downtown, and our banner project is actually running through the Craven Arts Council. As most of Swiss Bear's mission is downtown, this was a 5 Points initiative to have the Juneteenth banners up, so we went directly to the source and worked with them, and just haven't had any communication with Swiss Bear since 2021. But there are so many opportunities for us to collaborate with more people, more companies, and more initiatives in the future as Juneteenth continues to grow and becomes a powerhouse in our city for tourism and entrepreneurs to come out and display the things that make New Bern the wonderful city that it is. So thank you all again for considering it. Last but not least, this was a twofold ask. So I just wanted to mention that again, not only to make it a paid holiday for the city, but also to consider making it a city-sponsored event, the festival, the culmination of the 10-day celebration on the Saturday closest to Juneteenth. So again, thank you for even considering it, and I hope that we can make this happen for our city.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Mayor, I do want to add that we didn't receive all of our information in vetting for the Juneteenth to be listed as city-sponsored event in time for this agenda item, but it will be on the next agenda.
Okay. Board?
I'd like to go ahead and say, we raised employee wages. We committed to raise them again to match the municipalities around us. We're seeing that a lot of municipalities are going to a 13th holiday. So I'm in support of going to a 13th holiday, but I'll state my preferences for a personal leave observance. That way employees can take it however they want it. Some folks need to take their anniversary so they'll remember it, but they'll be able to do that. They'll be able to do Juneteenth, and it'll set us apart from a lot of other municipalities in that we give our employees that flexibility.
So you're recommending adding a holiday, but it being a flex day for an employee to take whenever they would like?
Personals, yeah, it's similar to what the state has for their cabinet agencies.
Okay.
So what you're recommending, it will not be classified, will it say Juneteenth? Or it'll be a holiday that any employee can pick? It'll be another holiday instead of Juneteenth, it would be another holiday.
The employee can pick Juneteenth if they so desire. The employee can pick,
Okay.
Whatever day they desire. I would argue that we need to put restrictions in place so that they don't take holiday and then get scheduled for time and a half. But I would be in favor of personal leave observance for an employee to take that holiday, which doesn't accrue at any point that they'd like to in the year.
Yeah, this comes right behind the July 4th holiday anyway, doesn't it?
That's correct.
I will offer a suggestion. I think Alderman Brinson has made one that certainly worthy of consideration. But we would be adding a holiday which would have an expense of a couple $100,000 roughly. I'm looking at the 2023 calendar, and I see, and I know this changes. I know it changes from year to year based off when holidays fall, but this year we're off, well, our paid staff is off, let me clarify that. Monday, December 25th for Christmas, Tuesday, December 26th, the day after Christmas, and Wednesday, December 27th, the day after Christmas. I'm going to venture to say there's not going to be a lot of productivity that Thursday and Friday of that week with staff being off Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I would offer a suggestion to move, and I know this would have to change year after year, but move the December 27th holiday on a Wednesday to Juneteenth and put it on the calendar.
Keeping us at 12.
Correct.
So you're saying that then they will only have 2 days off
Correct.
for Christmas holidays?
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and if they wanted the day after, they can take a vacation day.
Okay, but yeah, they would still get that holiday because it would be, it's just another date.
Correct. So for example, if Christmas falls on a Sunday, they would still get the Monday and the Tuesday off. They would get 2 days for Christmas essentially. That's a suggestion
I think we changed that a few years back to follow what the county does. Is that correct? Do you remember? Huh?
I believe that's right, yes.
Yeah, so we followed the county's calendar.
No comment there.
Just telling you where we got it from.
Okay. Is there any more questions on this? Any other
Prill?
members?
Foster, just a question for you. Would you envision wanting to put some level of control or restrictions on when a staff person could kind of choose to use the day? Only, and I'm only thinking from the standpoint that if it remained a flexible day off for the staff, you want to be able to maintain departmental operations throughout the year as opposed to, a large number of staff members in one department deciding to all take off on that one particular day, which is going to potentially affect service from that department on that day. So, I mean, do you see a need to put some kind of controls in place?
The biggest control we would put in place for something like this, the staff member would have to ask all the time off at least 2 weeks in advance. The department head would have to approve like the currently approved vacation time. With the flex holiday, and we've discussed this internally with some staff, we don't really see an issue where almost 500 employees, everyone wanting to take a specific day. I think it would be spread out over the entire year to where our operations would not be affected.
All right, so you're comfortable with it being a flex day off as
We
opposed to a
have
fixed
no
day?
problem with that.
Okay.
Are you finished?
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion to institute a 13th holiday of 8 hours of personal leave per calendar year.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second. Any more discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Brinson.
Alderman Brinson,
Yes.
Alderman Prill,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
No.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Question, when you say personal day, how are you referring to personal day? Are you referring to that personal day as they use their personal holiday, their personal leave? Okay, when you say personal day,
I use the same language, personal observance leave, which my understanding is a personal holiday in that it's not personal leave and it doesn't accrue.
okay, I just want to make it clear. I'm a little befuddled here right now, so let me get this straight.
There's 4 votes already, if that helps your decision.
Okay, it's still, this is gonna be classified as Juneteenth, okay? We're putting a 13th holiday a day in there, and it's classified as Juneteenth. So that's what I'm saying, why wouldn't it be classified as Juneteenth?
I think the way the state has it on their calendar is Juneteenth is on their calendar.
Yes.
Juneteenth, and in parentheses, flex day, or
Yes.
something to that effect.
I'm a little,
That way the employees will know if they want to take that day. I mean, if they want to celebrate Juneteenth, that's the day they would take. But it's not a day off for all employees. It's a day off for the employees that want to take off that day.
Okay, but the other employees will get their day off whenever they choose to take it.
Yes.
Okay,
Well, see, I was confused.
that's why I asked the question, because
I was confused.
All right, Mr. Attorney, where are we at? We're in the middle of a vote, and we've got,
I was confused.
somebody can change their vote if they would like.
Yes, ma'am, yes, sir, the board is still deliberating. If there's been a misunderstanding or a mistake, you are free to correct your vote.
Okay, so,
And just.
Should I try
to be
and
clear,
clarify?
So we're all on the same page.
Yes,
The
please.
motion is to add a 13th holiday. There's currently 12, so this would be an extra day that any city employee could take as a personal observance day that is paid, but it does not accrue to the next year. You can't bank your personal observance days. You must take that holiday. It could be Juneteenth, it could be your birthday, but it can't be an existing holiday to which you would be entitled time and a half for your day off.
so that's the key here, time and a half.
It's one of the keys.
Okay.
But you're adding an extra holiday to the current calendar.
So the city won't have to pay that additional leave.
Well, you're paying people their salaries.
Time and a half, that's what I meant.
No time and a half, no ma'am.
Right, okay.
okay, so my vote is yes.
Alderman Royal has changed her vote to yes. Alderman Best, it's your turn.
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
No. Motion carries, what was the count?
6-1.
6-1. Okay. Moving on to item number 16, we have an appointment, Alderman Prill, to the Planning and Zoning Board.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I had the opportunity to meet and talk to 6 individuals who had expressed a desire to be considered for the Planning Zoning Board position. I would like to recommend to the board that Mr. Rusty Ingram, who is in the audience tonight, that he be appointed to the Planning and Zoning Board.
Have a motion for Rusty Ingram to be appointed to the Planning and Zoning Board. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Alderman McKenzie. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, sir. I believe that was all the appointments we had for this evening, unless I missed any. All right, we will move on to Attorney's report.
Nothing to report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager's report.
A few items to update you on.
Oh, you just kidding. We were making such good time.
I'm sorry, it won't take very long. Tisdale House, had a conversation with Dan Tower, the owner of the Rim Avenue property. They have started removing the porches on the Tisdale House. They're getting ready to start removing the back stairway of that as well. Staff is having a meeting with Mr. Tower on site tomorrow. They're going to walk the proposed route that the house will be moved. They're going to be bringing steel in to get ready to start putting that steel underneath the house as they get ready to move it. Their goal is to move that house on May 6th. So we'll give you updates as we know more. Had a meeting with our elevator contractors today. There has been a delay in the elevator. It was supposed to arrive last month, but now they're telling us it's going to be another month or so. So that has pushed back the completion date of this project. So at this time, best guess estimate is going to be middle of this summer before the elevator project is complete. It's just based on the supply with the elevator. So
Do we have any clauses in our contract for delay?
there is daily
Okay.
clause after.
Does it count on?
Not for force majeure. Yeah, that's something out of their control. We do have liquidated damages for delays that are within the control of the contractor, but not supply chain delays.
So has the supply chain issued a force majeure?
Yes.
They have. Okay.
Next item that we have is we're working on two programs, and we're going to be bringing more information to you soon. One is an Adopt a Storm Drain program. Is the summer storms and things start heating up, we always get complaints in certain neighborhoods about the storm drains being blocked, and so we're going to open up a program for those that live on certain streets, if they would like to adopt a storm drain and take part in helping to clean those things out by removing sticks, twigs, debris, leaves, and things like that to help city staff, we would greatly appreciate that. So we're going to be rolling some more information out about that soon. We're also going to be starting a community cleanup day. This will be a monthly program where we will focus on a different area of the city each month. We are also going to encourage all the neighborhoods in the city to also have their own cleanup day at the same time. Public Works will be providing bags and things like that to help, and so we're going to have a robust advertising campaign for that. Also a reminder that Magic Midways returns to Lawson Creek Park. They are there setting up now for the carnival. That will be held April 14th through the 23rd, so that should be an exciting time. This is the 5th time they've been with us, and they've had the public has really embraced them. And the clerk, I believe, if she hasn't today, she's getting ready to reach out to everyone regarding to see if you're available for the Pleasant Hill Community Center grand opening. So once we hear back, we're going to set that date, which is going to be most likely in the next 2 weeks. We look forward to opening that facility and starting to have programs there. And that's all I have.
Okay. New business, starting with Alderman Prill.
I have no new business.
Alderman Royal.
None, please.
Alderman Astor.
Yes. In light of the conversation we had tonight concerning Crime Stoppers, as fire chief, during my career, we used Crime Stoppers at least 3 times that I can remember. It was very successful. And I would like to take $1,000 of my ARP money and donate it to Crime Stoppers to help fight the crime in the county, and especially in the city of Newton.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is that a permissible expense?
It's a 501c.
I thought there was a question because somebody wanted to do that for the Fireman Museum, and we were told we couldn't.
The museum was allowed.
Yeah, the museum was allowed.
Museum.
Okay.
This is, I gotta just look at it.
Well, then how about
Contingent upon it being.
contingent upon it being illegal?
Okay, so his motion is contingent upon it being an allowable expense. Have a motion by Alderman Astor and a second by Alderman Brinson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Alderman Kinsey.
No, sir.
Alderman Best.
Yes, I do. I just want to say thank you to the mayor and manager, assistant city manager, and Mr. Childs for the ward tour. It was, I had a lot of fun with you guys. Got a lot of questions answered. Saw a lot of problems within Ward 5, and hopefully that we can get some of those issues addressed. So I just want to thank you. I think that was something that we really need, Mayor Odham, and I'm glad that you recommend that as being a part of the city's responsible for getting out into these wards and looking at what is needed for our citizens. And then secondly, I guess, Foster, I guess, I got a complaint, well, not a complaint, it was a concern, really, from 2 citizens about, there's about 6 kids playing over there by the Biddle Street Pond. And they were down inside, I guess you could say, by the pond. Is there any way that we can put like some kind of, I know you can't really ask for a fence because that project is not yet completed, but some type of border, you know how you get those orange looking borders that you put around an area, or
Like temporary fencing, is that what you're referring to, or?
something just so that, you know, if these kids cross over that border, then, hey, right now it's like it's open and they can just go there and get in the pond, fall in the pond, get drowned in or whatever. But if there's some, and I don't know what kind of responsibility that would be for the city if a child goes out there, plays and drowns in that Ron.
We've talked about this a lot, and
Okay.
I wanted to say that the insurance company had an issue with us putting a fence up, a permanent fence.
Not a permanent fence, like, you know how, I can't think of the name of the
I
campus.
think what we're supposed, I think.
Some kind of plastic, like, liner around
Yeah,
it.
you're talking about a temporary construction type fence.
There you go.
I think what I've heard staff say in the past, for a permanent standpoint, there's supposed to be certain plants that are planted around there, so if somebody falls in, they have a way to grab something and pull up. That's what I believe Seth or somebody in Development Services
But
told us
there's no
last time.
plants, nothing, it's just,
Well, and they're not finished with the Middle Street
I
Pond
know,
yet, either.
exactly.
And of course, that construction will be ramping up, most likely later this summer as well. So there will be some work going on over there. We can certainly put some signage up to warn folks. We can
Okay.
definitely look at that.
even that would help, if there's some kind of sign erected or something. That's all I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
Alderman Brenson.
I'll try to be quick. I had the privilege last week to represent the board at the Civil Military Community Council meeting at Cherry Point. Received several important updates. As many of you know, F-35s are replacing the Harriers that are there. The Marine Air Wing Commanding General Benedict reported that half the pilots and half the maintenance personnel have already arrived for their first F-35 squadron, and the first F-35s are expected to arrive by the end of May. And this will grow to 6 total squadrons over the next several years. And as a note for our planning efforts, he specifically mentioned his concern was that on-base and off-base housing was not adequate to house all the officers and senior NCOs they expect to receive. So that's another major employer talking about lack of housing there. FRC East XO, Captain Birdie stated that FRC East was awarded Marine C-130 and Air Force HH-60 Blackhawk and Air Force H-167 Gray Wolf depot level work. Essentially what that means is all 3 of those are going to grow to about 400 jobs, which is about $30 million in economic impact. They're growing their internships and they're growing their internal airframe and power plant A&P certifications to start developing those entry-level employees that they will need by 2025 in both Cherry Point and Global Trans Park in Kinston. So those of you that have, kids college age or high school, they need to be pointed in that direction if you want to keep them here in the area. He stated the average salary at FRC East employees about $70,000. So we're not talking about a cheap job either. Department of Defense hasn't determined the F-35 depot level maintenance location, but Cherry Point's also in the running for that. So if that decision's made, that would be more jobs. The base commander, Colonel Burke, stated that tours are open to groups and officials. He wants to bring as many people through as he can, so I'd love to see this board, several of our board members, as well as the city manager and even the assistant city manager. I don't know if he's been there enough lately. But to attend to inform our long-term planning efforts. And so if the board so desires, I can try and put that together along with our city clerk. And then lastly, Women's Veterans Day is June 12th, and in honor of that, the Veterans Organic Garden and NC Works are going to host a resource fair and a Women's Veterans Appreciation Luncheon on Friday, June 16th at noon at the Riverfront Convention Center. Tickets are $25, and they are available on Eventbrite if you so desire to attend. That's all I have.
Okay. I have no new business, and it's my understanding we do not need a closed session. All right, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn.
A motion is second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We're adjourned.